Zohran Mamdani is the new mayor-elect of New York City, and he is taking off the mask. He's doing all the aggressive things. How should Republicans fight back? What are the dangers for Republicans? Plus, President Trump's tariffs on the board at the Supreme Court. What happens over there? We'll get to all of it first. We have less than 2,000 Daily Wire lifetime memberships remaining. It turns out that having all-access benefits for life is really popular. So here are your options. You could buy one while they're still available, or you could win mine. Yes, I, as a co-founder of the company, do in fact have my very own lifetime membership, but I am willing to give it to you, the people. But only if you head on over and download that free Daily Wire Plus app in the App Store, open it, and tap follow under my picture. That's it. You are now entered, and who knows? I could be calling you personally, yes, to give you my personal lifetime membership. Before any of that happens, you need to download that Daily Wire Plus app and follow me inside it right now to enter to win. Well, folks, Zohran Mamdani campaigned as a smarmy, smiling, empathetic gentleman who only cared about affordability and just wanted to help you. And he got a bunch of fun videos around bodegas and eating rice with his hands and speaking in various languages. And it was all happy-dappy-do. And now here comes the hammer, because Zohran Mamdani has made very clear that he wants to actually do all the things he said he was going to do. And so New Yorkers are about to find out the ticket that they just bought, and they're about to take the ride. According to the New York Times, a newly empowered Zohran Mamdani on Wednesday vowed to use his convincing victory in the New York City's mayor race as a mandate to push an ambitious progressive agenda past potential obstacles from billionaire antagonists to Albany bureaucracy. In a shift from the mollifying tone he had used for months, Mr. Mamdani made clear that while he would govern for all New Yorkers, he was determined to deliver for those who had been agitating for structural change. One of my least favorite phrases in all of politics, I'm here to govern for everyone. Okay, that's what the government does. The government literally makes legislation that affects everyone, but clearly you are not. You are here to govern for the people and on behalf of the people who elected you, namely far, far left progressives and third worldists. I mean, that is what Zohran Mamdani is here to do. He's here to govern on behalf of socialism and pro-jihadism and chew bubble gum, and he's all out of bubble gum. He said in a phone interview, quote, "I'm also looking to be clear about the mandate that we won over the course of this election. It is a mandate to deliver on the agenda that he ran on." He had said that he was going to try to find creative ways to pay for his signature policies without radically increasing taxes, and then he immediately reversed himself, and then he started talking about taxing the rich. Quote, "My supporters and our movement are hungry for a politics of consistency, a politics that actually focuses on the needs of working people. I think our tax system is an example of the many ways in which working people have been betrayed." Now, as we talked about on the program yesterday, actually, the amount of tax revenue derived from the top of the top of the top of the income tax bracket in New York City is far out of proportion to their percentage of the population. I mean, it is not even close. The top 0.1% of income earners in New York pay 25% of all the tax revenue in New York City. And he's saying that somehow this is targeting working people, which is an astonishing claim. I mean, just on a statistical level, it's an astonishing claim. The New York Times is trying to make excuses for all of this. His confidence is understandable. He's the first New York City mayoral candidate since John Lindsay to win over 1 million votes. Now, let's be clear. The reason he won over 1 million votes is not because he is so much more popular than all the other candidates of the last 30 years, 40 years, who have not won that number of votes. The reason he won over 1 million votes is because there was a competitive candidate coming up behind him who was also a Democrat. And so in order to defeat Andrew Cuomo, he had to win more than 850,000 votes. That's the reality. But it's okay. You know, the good news is that Democrats, again, they're going to have to own this stuff. Now, there are no economics behind what he's attempting to do. In order for him to actually pay for all of this, he needs the governor of New York to go along with massive tax increases. As the Wall Street Journal points out, in order for him to get his proposals paid for, he would need to raise the highest state corporate tax rate from 7.25% to 11.5%. Okay, that is a massive increase, a huge increase in the state corporate tax rate. And it applies to businesses that have a physical presence in New York and to businesses that derive a certain amount of sales from the state. Now, if you think the businesses won't relocate over that sort of stuff, they absolutely will. They absolutely will. And that requires approval from state lawmakers and Kathy Hochul. And so if they acquiesce, it could drag down the Democratic Party. Kathy Hochul very narrowly beat Lee Zeldin in the last New York gubernatorial election. There's certainly no guarantee that she would defeat Elise Stefanik, who's already running dead even with her in the New York gubernatorial race. He also wants a millionaire's tax, a 2 percentage point rate hike or 51% increase on the personal income tax paid by New York City's highest earners or those making more than $1 million a year. The tax rate in New York City alone on the highest income New Yorkers would move from 3.88% to 5.88%. And that's on top of the state tax, on top of the federal tax. And if you're a rich person, guess what? You're mobile and you can leave. This is how cities die, truly. They destroy their tax base. They decide they want to make payoffs to a particular set of citizens at the expense of the tax-paying public. And the people who pay the taxes decide, you know what? I'm not in. I'm gone. And then they leave. And then the city, in need of more tax revenue, increases the taxes on the next richest group of people. And then those people leave. And this is how you destroy the tax base of a major metropolitan area. Coming up, we'll get into Zoran Mamdani. How much money is he going to spend? Where's he going to get that money? What the hell is he talking about? We'll get into all of that momentarily. First, are you aware of House Bill Section 702? That extends the right of government agencies to legally monitor American citizens and some of their internet activity without requiring a warrant. Well, you know, that's going to have some downstream impact, particularly from your internet service provider. But you can protect your own online activity when you use ExpressVPN. Your internet service provider tracks every website you visit, and they can legally share that data with not only the government, but also with other companies to market to you and keep track of you. This is where ExpressVPN comes in. ExpressVPN is a virtual private network that reroutes all of my internet activity through secure encrypted channels. This means no one, not government entities, data brokers, even my internet service provider, can access my online activity. I use ExpressVPN legitimately all the time. I am using hotel Wi-Fi right now. Well, you know, that means that the ISP for the hotel has access to my info, or at least they would, except that I clicked the button and now I'm protected. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, the number that identifies you online, and allows data brokers to create a profile of your activities. It's also incredibly user-friendly, requiring just one tap to activate across devices on up to 14 devices at once. We need to demand a better government, yes. But until we can change what is happening in our country, protect yourself the way I do with ExpressVPN. And right now, if you go to expressvpn.com/Ben, you can get 4 extra months of privacy. expressvpn.com/Ben. That's expressvpn.com/Ben. Alrighty, let's also talk about something that really, really matters. Honoring American veterans on Veterans Day. Legacy Box has been with this show for years and years and years, and they've done amazing work for our listeners. They've helped preserve the memories of over 1 million families, and now they're teaming up with all of us here at the Daily Wire to give back in a giant way. Legacy Box is donating $10,000 worth of legacy boxes to American veterans, so those incredible stories of service and sacrifice don't get lost to time. Here's where it gets personal. If there's a veteran in your family, head on over to get.dailywire.com/legacybox or click the link in the show notes to submit your story for a chance to feature your legacy right here on the show. Even if you don't have a veteran in your life, obviously, you have a legacy worth preserving. Right now, Legacy Box is giving all of my listeners exclusive access to this deal in honor of Veterans Day, just $9 per tape to digitally preserve your family memories. Legacy Box is the world's largest digitizer. They've helped over 1 million families relive their most important moments, digitizing every tape, photo, and film reel by hand right in Chattanooga, Tennessee. If you order right now, you can still get your digitized memories back in time for the holidays so you can relive those precious moments as a family. Now, we've digitized enormous numbers of old film reels. That means I can see my grandparents, my parents when they were kids. They can see themselves as children with their parents. It's an amazing thing. Whether it's a loved one in uniform or your family's holiday mornings, preserve the stories that shaped you. Head on over to legacybox.com/Shapiro today to preserve your family's history. That's legacybox.com/Shapiro. The amount of money that he wants to spend is astonishing. He wants universal childcare in New York City that would cover children from 6 weeks old through 5 years old. Meanwhile, he also wants to spend $7 billion a year on new rent-stabilized units, $70 billion in municipal debt for a decade, and he wants to freeze the rent. Okay, now, freezing the rent, I'm just telling you, will result in no new units being built in the city. I'm still in New York. No developer is going to build new units in the city if the rent is frozen. There's no way to do it. Because why would you? Meanwhile, he wants to spend almost $1 billion a year on fast and free buses, which, by the way, will just become homeless shelters. Because if it is free to ride the bus, then there's no way to kick you off the bus if you have overstayed your fare. So people will just live on the bus. All of this as New York City's finest NYPD are freaking out. I know people in the NYPD. Everyone who can retire is going to retire. Everybody who can find another job will find another job. Already, the Jewish FDNY commissioner in New York handed in his resignation, Robert Tucker, one day after Mamdani's election. He informed Mayor Eric Adams he would step down from the roles he had held for 12 months on December 19th. He's going to go back to running a private security firm. Not a shock. Many, many more people will follow because Zoran Mamdani's team is extraordinarily radical, really, really radical. The New York Post has a breakdown on the people who will be in Mamdani's ear. Now, first of all, Mamdani himself is radical. Pretending that Mamdani is not radical is totally insane. The man got into politics as a member of Students for Justice in Palestine, a radical anti-Israel and pro-terrorism group. Zoran Mamdani has repeatedly spoken up on behalf of terrorists. It's astonishing when I hear Democrats try to claim that he's not pro-jihadist. He literally cut a rap on behalf of people who are in jail for funding jihad. The Holy Land Five. He literally posed next to an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing who has talked up the value of jihad. During this campaign, he literally went on national television and said he had no opinion on whether Hamas, a terrorist group, should disarm. Spoiler alert, if you're anti-jihad, typically you think all terrorist groups should disarm. Not just Hamas. Boko Haram should disarm. Like, sure, why not? They're terrorist groups. But he had no opinions whatsoever because he actually is not in favor of Hamas disarming. So he is perfectly radical on all these issues, economic to foreign policy related, but he's also surrounded by people who are extraordinarily radical. So Linda Sarsour, a mentor and friend to Mamdani, is going to be very close to him. She, of course, said back in 2019, when she was part of the Women's March, that Jewish marchers could not take part because, quote, one cannot be a feminist and a Zionist at the same time, which is kind of an astonishing thing, considering that I'm not sure how one could be a radical Islamist and a feminist at the same time. Radical Islam does not seem to treat women particularly well or equally. The Council on American Islamic Relations and CARE Action are going to be in his ear. That group has long-standing and deep ties to terrorist organizations, according to Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. They, too, were unindicted co-conspirators in a 2007 terrorist funding case linking CARE to Hamas. Political action committees connected to CARE donated more than $140,000 to Zoran Mamdani's PAC. They helped mobilize the Muslim vote in New York City, which, of course, got out in big numbers for Zoran Mamdani. Democratic Socialists of America, of which he is a charter member, is backing him, of course. The United Federation of Teachers, which destroys public education, is backing him. Those are the people who are surrounding him. And then there are the people who are part of his transition team. His transition team, just as shockingly radical as you would imagine. Apparently, he has named a 5-woman transition team, stocked with former officials from City Hall, but also he has included Lena Khan, the former FTC chair, a person who is radically, radically anti-business. Melanie Hartzog, a former deputy mayor for Health and Human Services under Bill de Blasio. Alana Leopold, another Bill de Blasio holdover. Grace Bonilla, the head of the United Way of New York City and an alumna of Bloomberg, who might be the only sane person. And Maria Torres Springer, the deputy mayor to the current mayor, Eric Adams. He says he's going to keep Jessica Tisch on as the head of the NYPD. Nah, she's going to leave. She's going to leave. You watch. She will quit. Sometime in the next 6 months, she'll quit. And by the way, she still doesn't have a formal job offer, according to the New York Post. The Democratic candidate told Tisch they would speak about his plan to keep her as commissioner. But, we'll have to see how all of that plays out. Now, meanwhile, it is worth noting, Olivia Reingold has an excellent piece over at the Free Press talking about the plan that the DSA has for cities beyond New York. And those are very, very shockingly radical plans. According to the Free Press, they have now reviewed thousands of pages of internal Democratic Socialists of America documents, which show that the organization's leaders view Mamdani as a tool in their agenda to abolish prisons and borders and ultimately end what they call the barbaric order of capitalism. The DSA was founded in 1982. It's a political body dedicated to the doctrine of democratic socialism, which is a variety of socialism that simply specifies how it would like revolution to occur, peacefully through subversion of democracy. Now, again, one of the fun things about the left is that they're constantly screwing around with the definitions of terms. Socialism, typically speaking, is the government control of the market-based order, nationalization of resources, getting rid of the pricing system, all the rest. Now, you can have touches of socialism in a capitalist economy. This is called a mixed system. The United States obviously has a mixed system. So, by the way, does Denmark, so does Norway. Fully socialist countries would become countries like Cuba, North Korea. China is sort of an economically fascist system that has maintained aspects of nationalization, but then allowed certain aspects of the private market to operate so they can actually have a workable pricing system. When people say democratic socialism, sometimes they mean Norway, and sometimes they mean like the DSA, which is to say, like communism achieved through democratic means. The DSA held its annual convention in August with the theme Rebirth and Beyond, reflecting on a decade of DSA's growth and preparing for a decade of party building. There, according to Olivia Reingold at the Free Press, delegates voted to adopt a resolution titled Principles for Party Building, which stated that the purpose of the DSA is to, quote, unite workers to win the battle for democracy and bring about socialism, not to seek a governing coalition with a perceived lesser evil under the current undemocratic political system. A socialist party in the United States must be part of a global political movement of the working class. So, I mean, these are just communists. That's all. And they have nothing to do with the traditional Democratic Party. And yet, they have more and more play. More and more play. They have made it a full-time job to infiltrate school boards and mayoralties all over the country. And they're not being stopped. They're not. There's going to be a whole new wave of DSA-inspired candidates all across America. There's one, Rura Rahman, running for Georgia governor in 2026. She, of course, has talked about how Israel is a fascist government, which is sort of table stakes for the DSA. She canvassed for Mamdani. She is mainly driven, again, by the same concerns that drove Zohran Mamdani, this sort of radical third worldism that is deeply connected, of course, to anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment. Her bid is a long shot in that Democratic primary, but she is running. Graham Plattner is very likely to win the Senate nomination in Maine in 2026. He, too, is a radical in the mold of Zohran Mamdani. He's taken some hits because he had a giant Nazi tattoo on his chest, which he then denied was a Nazi tattoo, and then covered it up with an even uglier tattoo, actually. But he is, of course, a democratic socialist. There's a woman named Kat Ubagazala. She's a candidate for Illinois' 9th Congressional District in 2026. She has a lot of followers on TikTok. She, like Mamdani, is very socially media savvy. She was indicted by a federal grand jury recently for allegedly blocking vehicles outside an ICE facility. Apparently, she and other protesters surrounded a federal officer's vehicle, banged on its hood and windows, etched pig on the side, and impeded movement. Although she's not formally DSA, her platform basically mirrors DSA. There's Shama Sawant, who I actually have met before because she was running for mayor at one point in Seattle. Now she's running for Washington's 9th Congressional District in 2026. She's running as an independent socialist. I mean, she's openly a socialist, openly a Marxist. Abdul El-Sayed running for U.S. Senate in Michigan in 2026. He, again, is very much in the mold of Zohran Mamdani. Omar Fatah, who ran for Minneapolis mayor, he came in second place in the first round of votes. And since no candidate originally received a majority, there will now be a second round of votes. Now, these candidates are there. They are very much to the left. And the Democratic Party seems to have very little systemic immunity to them, like at all. All it's going to cost you, if they win, is all your money and all your freedom. This is basically the platform. Zohran Mamdani, well, one of the fun things about the socialists when they campaign is they campaign on happy dappy do, as they say. And then the mask comes off and they say, give me your money. So yesterday, Zohran Mamdani did that. Already coming up, Zohran Mamdani, he is in fact implementing socialism because he's doing the first thing socialists do. He's trying to take money from people. We'll get to that in a moment. First, Good Ranchers. Okay, Good Ranchers is great. Why? Well, because it's American meat. Recently, I learned that over 4 billion pounds of meat were imported into the United States last year, and that can still be labeled technically product of the United States. If labels can be misleading about something as basic as where it's coming from, what don't you know about the meat that you're buying? That's why Good Ranchers is taking over the game with quality meat you can trust, all born and raised right here on American soil. I'd say that my staff and their children are maybe surviving on Good Ranchers alone at this point. I've seen the size of the babies in like the Daily Wire family. The producers and my assistant, they have children, and these children are very large. And I think the reason these kids are big is because they're going to be linebackers fed on the great meat of Good Ranchers. 100% American meat, locally sourced from American family farms and ranches, delivered straight to your door. You can also pause or delay boxes anytime. It is incredibly flexible. Here is the deal. Good Ranchers for the holidays is a great idea. It's a great idea. You got Thanksgiving coming up. You got Christmas coming up. A lot of big holidays. Going to need some meat. Go to Good Ranchers right now. Here's the deal. All new subscribers to any Good Ranchers box using code Ben will get an additional $100 off your first 3 orders, $40 off your first, $30 off your second, $30 off your third, and free meat for life when you subscribe. So hit up goodranchers.com this holiday season full of delicious meals. Again, use code Ben. Goodranchers.com. Let's get back to the table. Also, I just got to tell you, I'm on the road. Okay, I've told you this 1,000 times. When I'm on the road, I take Bull and Branch on the road with me. That's how good their product is. It is just that good. If I'm at a hotel and I don't have my Bull and Branch blanket, I'm not going to sleep well. I'm just not. So I actually pack it up. It's very annoying because I wish that everybody used Bull and Branch and I wouldn't have to schlep it all over the country. But I literally schlep the product all over the country because it is that good. And right now, Bull and Branch is having their best sale of the year right now. 25% off everything on the site. If you've been thinking about upgrading your bedding, this is definitely the time. I'd start with their signature sheets. They're great. They've nailed that sweet spot between being soft and breathable, and that makes a huge difference for getting good sleep. The cool thing, they actually get softer every time you wash them. They're made with top quality, 100% organic cotton. All their stuff is excellent. The blankets, the throws, the pillows, the duvets, all built to last. High quality stuff. Really great. Plus, they've got this 30-night guarantee, so if you're not happy with it, you're covered. Pretty much zero risk. Give yourself and your loved ones the most extraordinary feeling of sleep with 25% off site-wide plus free shipping and extended returns during Bull and Branch's best sale of the year. Shop right now, bullandbranch.com/Ben with code Ben. That's Bull and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/Ben. Code Ben for 25% off. Exclusions apply. Yesterday, he said he needed money from 2 separate sources. First, working people needed to donate money to his transition team because, sure, you're poor, but he needs your money. And second, he needs money from the rich people to pay for all of his plans to, destroy the rich people.
There were a few months ago where I told supporters across this city to stop donating. And today I am asking them to start once again. And I am asking them to do so because of the fact that a transition that can meet the moment of preparing for January 1st is one that will require staff, it will require research, it will require infrastructure. And those are things that we will have to provide. And I'm excited for the fact that it will be funded by the very people who brought us to this point, the working people who have been left behind by the politics of the city.
I mean, that is very exciting. I'm sure they are very, very happy to fund Zohran Mamdani. I mean, obviously, they're concerned with affordability. And when you are concerned with affordability, then you want to give money to people's transition teams. Just in my personal view, there were times, early on in my marriage, when my wife and I, we were basically down to our last couple $1,000s in savings, and we were starting to have to figure out, taking out second credit cards and moving some credit around and all that. And I remember at that time, I was very much interested in giving money to the transition team for a political candidate of my choice. But don't worry, he let's be real. The people he wants money from are all the people that he also wants to destroy. And so he's not asking, he is telling.
Let's dig into that, because you're talking about a rent freeze, you're talking about free buses, you're talking about free childcare. Can you do that without raising taxes?
I think you can do that, and I think you have to raise taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers who make more than $1 million a year, and you do that by raising taxes by them 2%. And then you also increase the corporate tax of New York State to match that of New Jersey. So that takes us from about 7.25 to about 11.5%, which is what we see in New Jersey. These things together raise about $9 billion, which more than pays for our economic agenda and also starts to Trump-proof our state.
But are you worried that could drive a lot of job creators out of New York?
So what I've heard from a number of business leaders is that the affordability crisis is also affecting their ability to attract and retain talent. The city's inability to provide childcare means that businesses often have to provide stipends for that childcare. Right now, the absence of universal childcare means that a family will pay around $22,500 a year, which is more money than many of them would spend if they sent that same kid to college 18 years later.
I mean, you got to be kidding me. But this is what they're... Okay, so here's the question for Democrats. You going to go along with this? You going to go along with this? Truly, you have a choice on a national level. I mean, you had a choice on a city level, too, and none of you had the actual stones to come out and stop Zohran Mamdani in the primaries. But I understand New York, it's not indicative of the rest of the country. There are like 8 registered Republicans here, and 5 of them voted for Curtis Sliwa. I totally get that. However, on a national level, is this, if you want to play, listen, as a Republican, if you wish to embrace Mamdaniism as your future, scary for the country. I don't think it's good for the country. I think we need 2 robust parties, neither of which is socialist or communist. But if you want to do this on an electoral level, then as somebody who wants Republicans to continue to win, I very much urge you to play this game, because play stupid games, win stupid prizes. AOC, who's being widely touted as a presidential candidate in the next election, 2028. And again, I think she has some real strength in that area. She says that the entire party must surrender to Zoran Mamdani. Everyone must bow their heads.
He had to not just defeat a Republican. He had to defeat a Republican and the old guard of the Democratic Party at the same time. He was fighting a war on 2 fronts and not just one. And he still won resoundingly. And I think the message that sends is that the Democratic Party cannot last much longer by denying the future.
Okay. So, yeah, you're denying the future if you deny socialism. Well, actually, it seems to me you're more denying the past if you advocate socialism, because the history of socialism is literally tens of millions of bodies stacked. So there's that. But don't worry, Bernie Sanders, a complete lifelong useless person who basically is like old Zoran Mamdani. Like, never held a real job, complete useless artist type from when he was younger, like so useless he was kicked off a commune, but somehow has managed to turn that into a leadership position in American politics, because this is a great country and anyone here can succeed. Here's Bernie Sanders saying his ideas aren't radical. It's not radical at all to say that we should arrest the Prime Minister of Israel when he comes. It's not a radical thing to say that we should take all the rich people and we should catapult them into the ocean and steal them. That's not radical. What's radical is to say that not everybody deserves healthcare of their choice from the finest doctors, paid for by no one, by magic tree money. Here we go. These are not radical ideas. These are just mainstream good ideas for Americans.
What is a radical idea, if I may say so, is Trump giving $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% and throwing 15 million people off the health care they have. That is a radical idea. Thinking that climate change is a hoax is a radical idea. We cannot become accustomed to a nation in which one guy on top, Mr. Musk, owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of American society. So I don't agree with you. It is not radical to say that we should have the best child care system in the world if we believe in our kids and if we believe in the future of this country. It's not radical to say that we should have efficient and fast and free bus service. These are not radical ideas. What is radical is that we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had.
I mean, again, you guys want it? You got it. Meanwhile, Mehdi Hassan, who, fresh off of his latest spate on Al Jazeera, here he was saying socialism isn't a vile word anymore. Well, I mean, I think that's because Americans don't actually have a lot of experience directly with socialism, but for whom socialism is a vile word, people who have had to live under socialism.
But now socialist is not a dirty word anymore.
What do you say?
Socialist is not a dirty word anymore.
Well, that's why they jumped to communist, right? You got to be communist.
Yeah, you
socialist. They immediately jumped to communist. Socialist is not a dirty word anymore. Democrats, listen up. Take some lessons. Don't get on your Ezra Klein nonsense. Don't let Ezra Klein analyze what happened here.
Don't let Ezra Klein, who's just calling for, abundance in actual useful regulation and maybe, some use of capitalism, the greatest tool for the development of wealth in all of human history. Don't let him make the decisions. Let Jamal Bowman, an unsuccessful congressional candidate who pulled the fire alarm in order to stop a congressional vote, be your spirit guide. Or maybe Hassan Piker, the scion of an incredibly wealthy family, a Nepo baby of Nepo babies, who lives in a $3 million mansion, shocks his dog on air, and preaches socialism at the same time. Maybe those guys should have, maybe Mehdi Hassan, who is a propagandist on behalf of the Qatari government while working at Al Jazeera, and then moved here and made millions of dollars ripping on the United States. Those people should be your spirit guides. I mean, listen, if Democrats want to do this, then go for it. Democrats seem a little bit divided on this issue. So Chuck Schumer, who didn't say for whom he voted, he said, we're moving forward now. We're moving forward.
I'm moving forward. This morning I talked with Mayor-elect Mamdani. We had a very, very good conversation. We said that we cared about New York City and that we look forward to working together to help the city and improve the city. I congratulated him on running a very, very good campaign. And the issue that he is stressed is being stressed by Democrats across the country, from one end of America to the other, the high costs that the Trump administration is imposing on us and their failure to do anything about it.
Okay. Well, you know, I hope that you enjoy your pusillanimous inability to simply denounce the radicals in your own coalition. We'll see how it works out for you. Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, he's doing the same thing. They're all dodging. They're weaving. I mean, I didn't even know they could move this well.
Do you think that he is a leader in the Democratic Party?
I think what we're seeing is it's less about what people call themselves and more about what they're focused on. The winner there in the New York mayor's race was unquestionably more focused on people's struggles, on the inability to afford housing, on the inability to pay the bills at the end of the week and at the end of the month. And I think people are less focused right now on even the policy proposals, but what they want is someone committed to trying to address it. And I think you see that across all the races, and that should be a wake-up call, not just to Democrats, but to everybody. You know, people are concerned the American dream is slipping away, and that's a huge threat to the country. You know, we have to believe that if we work hard and we play by the rules, we can get ahead.
We'll talk in a minute about the message that Republicans should take away from the elections that happened a couple of nights ago. But Democrats seem to be very divided on what the future of their party looks like. Representative Debbie Dingell over in Michigan, she says, you know, everyone keeps focusing on Mamdani. You might want to focus on like Abigail Spanberger, who won by 11 points in a purple state, and Mickey Sherrill, who also won a pretty wide victory over Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey.
Do you have concerns about Mamdani and the labels that this affords Republicans being used as a weapon against Democrats?
Okay, Republicans tried to make Nancy Pelosi the enemy in years past. I'm going to focus on the election of Abigail Spanberger, who is clearly a moderate, as is Mickey Sherrill. Both women that had strong military and national intelligence background. What I think the message from last night is people are worried. People are scared. They cannot afford their groceries. They're worried about their housing costs. They're worried about their utility bills, and they're worried about the health care. The Republicans can try to avoid that. That's what Americans are feeling. But I am the person that back in 2016 said we're in trouble as Democrats because we weren't hearing what working men and women were talking about.
Okay, well, I mean, again, it'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out. Hakeem Jeffries is doing the same exact thing. What's fascinating about what Hakeem Jeffries is doing here is he's tacitly admitting that Democrats have downplayed one of the key agenda elements that they were trying to push for the last 10 years. The trans issue absolutely destroyed the Democrats, and now Democrats have basically put that in the rearview mirror. They have. Mamdani mentioned it a little bit in New York, but New York, again, a very leftist jurisdiction. When it comes to New Jersey, or when it comes to Virginia, the Democratic candidates basically tried to run away from the trans issue by not even answering the question. And it basically worked for them, so long as that was not an elevated issue on everybody's mind. And so long as Democrats weren't militantly saying you must acknowledge that a boy is a girl, they've been able to sort of elide the question. And Republicans should get used to the idea this is what Democrats will do, that they may lie about their positions on trans issues, but they are certainly going to downplay those positions in order to focus on other issues. So that baton is not going to be nearly as potent in the future because Democrats have learned to avoid the baton. Here is Hakeem Jeffries basically admitting as much.
Abigail Spanberger focused on the issues that matter. Here's what Republicans did. They spent tens of millions of dollars trying to weaponize the transgender issue. It failed. And they spent tens of millions of dollars criticizing Abigail Spanberger for deeply inappropriate text messages that were sent by the Attorney General candidate, but not a dime in actually talking about what they would do for the people of Virginia, because Republicans have nothing but a failed track record and a bankruptcy of ideas. But that playbook failed spectacularly.
I mean, well, the reason it failed is not because Abigail Spanberger was right on the issue. It's because Abigail Spanberger ducked the issue. So Democrats are going to duck those issues in the future. Okay, coming up, the government shutdown continues. We'll get into the politics. Will the filibuster be nuked? We'll get into all of it first. Folks, let's say you like shooting already. Great, like me. But what if I told you you're only getting half the experience? Here's the reality. Shooting suppressed isn't just quieter. It is much, much better. Less recoil, tighter grouping, no more ears ringing after you leave the range. Silencer Shop helps take your shooting experience from ordinary to extraordinary, because your firearms should be both fun and functional. Now, here is the good news. Silencer Shop is the easiest and fastest way to get a suppressor, period. They've helped more Americans get silencers than anyone else. They're making getting one faster than ever. Their expert team helps handle the paperwork, connects you to a local dealer, gets you shooting suppressed with no hassle. Silencer Shop isn't just making it easier to buy the suppressors, they're fighting to protect your freedoms as well. Through the Silencer Shop Foundation, they filed a lawsuit against the federal government to challenge the outdated, unconstitutional regulations that still restrict and require registration of suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and other firearms. This lawsuit aims to strike down 91 years of federal overreach and restore your constitutional rights. So, visit silencershopfoundation.org to learn more and to support the fight. Also, let's be blunt. Gold just hit $4,000 an ounce for the first time ever. It's up 50% for the year. I recently re-upped. And the reason I re-upped is because I am very, very uneasy about the future of the global economy. And this is a great hedge against both inflation and uncertainty. Central banks right now are doing the same thing. They are flocking to gold. They are driving up the prices. Do they know something you don't? I mean, the answer is probably not. You probably should, go check it out. It's not too late. As I say, I recently bought more gold from Birch Gold. You can get in the door right now. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. You don't pay a dime out of pocket. Just text Ben to 989898. Claim your free info kit. There's no obligation, just useful information. Facts don't care about your feelings. The fact is that gold has been a safe haven for literally millennia. There's literally nothing else that can say that. Text Ben to 989898 right now. Claim your free info kit on gold. That's Ben to 989898. Protect your future today with Birch Gold. They make the entire process incredibly easy, incredibly simple. You call them up, you ask all your questions. Next thing you know, you got the gold in your safe. I know, I just did this myself a few months ago. Go check them out right now. Text Ben to 989898 to get started. So what should Republicans take away from Zohran Mamdani's victory, but also from victories for Democrats, not just in Virginia and New Jersey, but in local races all around the country? They won a couple of local races in sort of school boards and a couple of state legislative seats in places ranging from Georgia to Texas to Mississippi. So Democrats had a very good night. There are a few takeaways. The first takeaway, obviously, is that in off-year elections, the out-of-party power... The first lesson is that in off-year elections, as we all know, the party that is out of power tends to do very well because there's always a backlash against the governing party because all problems are now attributable to them. And there's no question that the government shutdown plays a part in this. Polls show that more Americans are blaming Republicans than Democrats for the government shutdown. They sort of blame both, but it's affecting the incumbent party more than it is affecting the party that is out of power because people don't understand really how the filibuster works. And we'll get to that in a little while. But the other lesson for Republicans, truly, the other big lesson for Republicans is that when you are in power, it is not enough to just campaign against the Democrats. You're going to have to actually figure out either solutions to problems via the government, or you're going to have to say the solution is not the government in the first place. So I think that lesson, that Republicans need some sort of positive message going forward, like a defense of the things that they're doing, or at least an explanation of why government involvement isn't going to solve the problem. They need that because otherwise it just sounds like you're beating up on the guy who's not even in power in the first place. Alrighty, folks, it's time for some fast facts. So President Trump has now responded to the election of Zohran Mamdani. He gave a speech yesterday in which he ripped on Mamdani, and he said, we're going to stop the country from going communist. Now, again, I don't think Americans like communism. I think that the reason that they say they like socialism is really because they don't know what socialism is, because the definition has been futzed. And second, because when people think of America, they think of capitalism. So if things are going badly, they don't like the status quo. But here was President Trump going after Mamdani.
And as long as I'm in the White House, the United States is not going communist in any way, shape, or form. We'll stop it. We're going to stop it. stop this nonsense. You know, I said they were voting last night. You could have a communist or a thug. A communist, and they took the communist, you know. It's pretty amazing.
So, you know, again, I think that he is right. He is right, and it's funny. But is it going to be enough to stop a blue wave that is going to just kind of hold the DSA a little bit at bay, but also hug them with the other arm? Here's President Trump ripping Mamdani's victory speech, which was incredibly militant and wildly communistic.
I thought it was a very angry speech, certainly angry toward me, and I think he should be very nice to me. You know, I'm the one that sort of has to approve a lot of things coming to him, so he's off to a bad start.
At one point he says, turn the volume up.
So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us.
How do you respond to that? Does that affect anything you're going to do?
It's a very dangerous statement for him to make, actually. And, you know, you talk about danger. I think it's a very dangerous statement for him to make. He has to be a little bit respectful of Washington, because if he's not, he doesn't have a chance of succeeding. And I want to make him succeed. I want to make the city succeed. I don't want to make him succeed. I want to make the city succeed, and we'll see what happens.
Well, again, we will see what happens. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, he said, welcome to Caracas on the Hudson. I was saying Venezuela is coming to New York.
I want to congratulate the people who voted for Mamdani, and welcome to Caracas on the Hudson. Welcome to Caracas on the Hudson. I don't know who's going to be more responsible for the bump in Miami real estate, Maduro or Mamdani.
Okay, now again, all of this is going to be potent, and all of that's true. The problem for Republicans is they are the party in power. When you are the party in power, things change. People tend to attribute the problems in the world to you. And so if they go to the grocery store and it's very expensive, and make no mistake, it is very expensive at the grocery store. A week of groceries is going to cost you a lot more than it did 2 years ago. It's stabilized somewhat over the course of the last year, but that doesn't mean the prices went down. It just means the prices remain very high. And wage gains have not really eaten that into that yet. I mean, the prices of everything feel very expensive to people right now, and people are not wrong to feel that. And when President Trump says things are becoming more affordable, people don't believe that they are becoming more affordable, because they aren't really more affordable. They might be more affordable compared to where it would have been if Biden were president, but we are no longer in that world. And you can't keep living in that world as the sitting president of the United States. Here's President Trump talking about prices.
We've done so much. You know, energy is way down. Look at energy. We're going to have $2 gasoline. I did that. That brings everything else down. Groceries are way down other than beef. Now, beef is going to come down. You know, we have to do that. You remember when I started, eggs were up by 4 times what they were previous. You know, it was in 2 days in the office and they tell me about eggs. I solved that because the fact is we have prices way down. We have prices down. Our country's doing well. The stock market's hitting record highs, like 48 times during my 9 months. And just a couple of days ago, it hit another record high, like really record high. It's great. And that equates, it's not just rich people. That's 401ks. I mean, that equates to everybody. And the country's doing very well. But as Republicans, you have to talk about it. Because if you don't talk about it, you know, I saw that they kept talking about affordability. Well, Biden was a disaster with affordability. He had the highest inflation rate in the history of our country. But you have to talk about it. It's no good if we do a great job and you don't talk about it.
Okay, now, he's not wrong about any of that. But there has never yet been a politician who tells people that their feelings about the economy are wrong, who ends up doing well in a midterm. I remember when Barack Obama did this, he said, well, people, they just don't understand. They just don't understand what I'm saying to them. I remember when he did that. I remember that Joe Biden used to, oh, they don't even understand the gains that we're making right now. And it didn't work for him. And so if people just don't feel good about the cost of groceries, you can't make them feel good by telling them things are great. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, because sometimes people are wrong in how they, but it doesn't work that way. And it also happens to be true that people are just paying a lot more in groceries than they did even a couple of years ago. And when you go to the grocery store, very often, you don't think about what you paid last year for groceries. You think, what did I pay 5 years ago for groceries? And the answer is a lot less. A lot less. And of course, a lot of that is Joe Biden. And over the course of the last year, again, inflation has really moderated. It's down in the 2.7 to 3% range, which is still too high on an annualized basis. But it's a lot lower than it was under Biden when for 1 year it spiked up into double digits. With that said, do people feel good about the price of groceries? The answer right now is no. They do not feel great about the price of groceries. In fact, I asked our sponsors over at Comet, a project of Perplexity, how much does a week of groceries cost for an average American family compared to 2 years ago and 1 year ago? So according to Comet, for an average American family, the weekly grocery cost in 2025 is around $250 to $270 a week, which is slightly higher than the past 2 years due to continued food price inflation. In 2023 and 2024, families were also spending close to $270 per week. However, if you ask Comet what was the average price of groceries for the same families in 2021, the grocery cost for a family of four ranged from about $146 to $289. So if you take the low end of that estimate, you are talking about a 50% increase in the course of the last 4 years. And so people continue to feel that. According to Comet, that number is about 20% increase in price. But if you're taking like the low end versus kind of the high end now, you're talking about 40% increase, 30, 40%. I mean, these are major costs to families, serious costs to families. And so the question becomes, what can government do about that? What can government do about that? Now, it seems to me that there are a few things the government can do about that. Number one, the Federal Reserve's main mandate always should have been not to get to 2% annual inflation, but to get to 0% annual inflation. That should always have been the Federal Reserve's mission. It is ridiculous that the Federal Reserve always had a dual mission of keeping unemployment low and also keeping inflation low. It is not the job of the Federal Reserve to keep unemployment low. That means that they get to mess around with the money in order to manipulate the markets every single day. And that is a problem. Senator Rand Paul is totally correct about this. That is a serious, serious problem. But beyond that, when people begin to have expectations of their government that are inaccurate, that the government can solve all your problems, you end up with actually bad policy. And this brings us to the tariff fight. President Trump wants to say that the tariffs that he has imposed are making life more affordable for Americans. He said that he continues to say that that tariff fight is making the American economy stronger. I see no evidence of this. I think at best you can say that the tariffs haven't wildly damaged America's economy yet. And that is due to an enormous amount of investment capital that is being deployed, particularly at the top end of the stock market. That is because there's probably some embedded price eating that was going on as the tariffs were being negotiated and continue to roil the markets. But the idea that we are rich because of the tariffs or the economy is doing better because of the tariffs, I see zero evidence that that is in fact the case. But in a country where everyone demands that the government do something, right? Let's be clear. The Mamdani candidacy in New York is a do something candidacy. People don't even have an idea what he's going to do, but he says he's going to do something. And so the idea is throw a bunch of against the wall and see what sticks. If in this country, the solution to every ill is give me more power on both sides, give me more power and I will fix, things ain't going to get fixed because it turns out that healthy, thriving, growing economies require the government to go hands off. Now, President Trump totally understands this with regard particularly to regulation and taxation. But when it comes to macroeconomic issues, things like subsidies or tariffs, when it comes to, quote unquote, protecting certain sectors, he goes the wrong way on this. Now, I will say that there is something happening right now that counterintuitively could be very, very beneficial to the president. So yesterday at the Supreme Court, there was a hearing over whether President Trump has the emergency power to simply set global tariffs on every country up to and including the Penguins and the Solomon Islands. Does he actually have the ability to do that by claiming a national emergency? That was the question. And the hearing at the Supreme Court did not go particularly well. As the Wall Street Journal says, President Trump's global tariffs ran headlong into a skeptical Supreme Court on Wednesday, with justices across the spectrum expressing doubt that a 1970s emergency powers law could be read to provide the president unilateral authority to remake the international economy and collect billions of dollars in import taxes without explicit congressional approval. Even if the court strikes down the tariffs Trump initiated, the justices gave little indication how they might unwind the policy. I mean, well, no, actually. What the justice said is the tariffs would have to stop because they're not congressionally approved. The question is what happens to the $90 billion or so of tax revenue that was taken in via the tariffs, because tariffs are a tax. How does that get refunded? And the answer is that it would be a very, very messy process, for sure. But Solicitor General John Sauer, on behalf of the administration, took heat from all sides as he pressed the administration's argument that the president's power to regulate foreign financial transactions when he declares an emergency includes the authority to impose tariffs. Now, again, the idea originally was that the president can regulate movement between territories that affect like terror groups, for example. It wasn't that the president just gets to completely remake the economy by saying national emergency, not enough soybeans getting exported. Now we got to have a tariff. Tariffs are taxes. They're congressionally allocated powers under the Constitution. To demonstrate the scope of Trump's claim in what I thought was the most important moment, Justice Neil Gorsuch said, quote, could the president impose a 50% tariff on gas-powered cars and auto parts to deal with the unusual and extraordinary threat from abroad of climate change? And the administration said yes. Now, I ask you again, as conservatives, is this a thing you want to do? Is this a thing you want? Do you want the president of the United States, who very easily could be a Democrat inside the next 4 years, do you want President AOC having the ability on the basis of a national emergency to cancel all gas-powered cars imported into the United States, for example? Is that a thing that you would like? Would you like her, on the basis of national security, to be able to shut down trade with allies, for example, or open trade with enemies? Every power that is delegated to the office of the presidency is not delegated to a person. It is delegated to the office. The tariffs were always unconstitutional. They were. I said it the day that President Trump announced them. Okay, now, whether you like tariffs or you don't like tariffs, if you like the tariffs, go stump for them with your congressman. Tell Congress to pass the tariffs. But ironically, if you want the economy to actually take off like a rocket, if you want the stock market to increase by 10%, have the Supreme Court strike down the tariffs. The stock market has been, I know so many investors, all of whom have been like, I'm going to invest. I'll probably put it at the top end of the stock market where the returns are good, the Magnificent Seven. The AI companies aren't subject to tariffs really so much because, of course, they're high tech and a lot of what they do is cloud-based. But if you want the rest of the stock market to actually grow, what would be great is a solid free trade regime, and then let the president go and negotiate further free trade agreements with our allies, places like Japan and South Korea and the Philippines, and then box in China and then go after China. I mean, that's how this should have been done in the first place. So with outside expectations comes outsized responsibility. And so if Republicans hope to survive the midterms next year, they're going to either have to come up with solutions that please the American people, or they're going to have to explain why governmental solutions are not available and power ought to be delegated back to the American people. Okay, meanwhile, this government shutdown continues. We are now in day 37 of this government shutdown. No one understands why we're doing this. Truly, no one understands. A clean CR has been available. Continuing resolution to fund the government at current levels has been available this entire time. The Republicans in the House passed it. The Senate has now voted on it 14 separate times. Democrats keep voting it down. The only way Democrats can do that is by invoking the legislative filibuster. They say you need 60 votes in order to be able to get this clean CR passed. Democrats continue to maintain this is the case even as SNAP benefits go away for a huge number of people. Even though flights are now going to be delayed at 40 airports, they're reducing 10% of their flights in order to deal with all of this. Democrats seem to show no qualms about what it is that they are doing at this point. Apparently, according to Axios, Senate Democrats are taking a moment after Tuesday night's resounding off-year wins before making any firm moves to reopen the government. Victories emboldening the party's hardliners, centrist Democrats seem stuck. Now, again, not all Democrats are similarly placed. If you are a Democrat in a purple state and you have to go home and explain to your constituents why you continue to vote for the shutdown, that's a very different thing than if you're a blue senator in a blue state where you get to go home and have all the people cheer for you because you stood up to Trump. Yay! Senator Chris Murphy, who of course is from Connecticut, which means that he's a blue senator from a blue state, he said, quote, I think it would be very strange if on the heels of the American people having rewarded Democrats for standing up and fighting, we surrendered without getting anything for the people we've been fighting for. House Democrats are warning of hell to pay if their Senate counterparts compromise too quickly. But if you are a senator from, Maine, which is a purplish state like Angus King, or if you are a senator from Pennsylvania, as Senator John Fetterman is, you might have some different thoughts on that. And Democrats should really consider whether the interests of their parties are well aligned if, in fact, they lose a bunch of seats in these purple states that they need to win. Right? Ironically, actually, in the purplish district, the resistance is very happy about the government shutdown. The real question is, in the purple districts that are flippable for Republicans, or purple states that are flippable for Republicans in the Senate. Is this shutdown going to benefit or harm Democrats? And I think in moderate areas, it ain't great for Democrats, which is, of course, the entire impasse. The Democratic Party itself is split on this issue. Hakeem Jeffries continues to maintain that the GOP needs to make some sort of concessions in order for a clean CR to pass.
But unfortunately, Republicans have continued to take a my way or the highway approach. That's what they did in their one big ugly bill. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripped food out of the mouths of children, seniors, and veterans with a $186 billion cut to SNAP. They did that in July. And all of this was done so they could reward their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks. The American people are rejecting that level of extremism, and it's certainly our hope that Republicans will see the need to change course, sit down with us as Democrats, and we can find our way out of this, unfortunately, very painful shutdown that the American people have been experiencing.
Now, President Trump, as a piece of leverage, it's unclear whether he means this sincerely or whether he's trying to use this as a piece of leverage. He is saying Democrats are showing zero interest in reopening. This part is true.
So, as you know, we are in the midst of a disastrous Democrat-created government shutdown, and it is Democrat-created, but I don't think they're getting really the blame that they should. That's now officially the longest shutdown in American history. The Democrat radicals in the Senate have shown zero interest in reopening the government.
Okay, and of course he's right. But then he says, actually, let's nuke the filibuster. So the filibuster is what Democrats are using in order to stop the clean CR. It requires 60 votes in order to get past the filibuster. Democrats are not lending the Republicans 7 votes in order to get past the filibuster. And so President Trump is calling for a thing that many Democrats have called for in the past, and some Republicans, the nuking of the filibuster, the use of the so-called nuclear option, whereby you go to the Senate parliamentarian, you ask if the filibuster can basically be overruled, and then with 51 votes, you pass a resolution in order to change the filibuster rules. The filibuster goes away, and now for the rest of American history, 51 votes in the Senate will allow you to do anything. Now, I like the filibuster. I think the filibuster is good. Why do I like the filibuster? Because the Senate was supposed to be originally a deliberative body, which is where the deals got made. And one of the obstacles to precipitous action was the filibuster. It made people actually get together and talk with one another, and you couldn't get anything done unless you had a broad consensus, because 60 is, of course, a lot higher than 51. I promise you, if the filibuster goes away, if, by either side, if the filibuster goes away, within 10 years, Democrats will have added at least 2 states to the Union, both Democrat. Democrats will have rewritten the electoral rules in the United States. They already tried to do this in the last congressional session, and the filibuster stopped them. Democrats will do all the magical things that they have been pledging to do. They will. Fundamentally, the form of government of the United States will shift. The filibuster is sort of the last vestige of a system that requires some level of popular approval for a policy beyond bare majoritarianism. So I'm very, very anti-killing the filibuster. Here's what the president had to say, on the other hand.
I think it's very important. We have to get the country open, and the way we're going to do it this afternoon is to terminate the filibuster. And it's possible you're not going to do that. And I'm going to go by your wishes. You're very smart people. We're good friends. But I think it's a tremendous mistake, really. It would be a tragic mistake, actually. It's time. It's time. If I thought they weren't going to approve, I'd sort of be with you. I'd be fine. I'd be neutral to with you. But knowing that they're going to pass it as soon as they get any semblance of control, they'll pass it first thing, then it's like we have to do it first.
Now, again, this point that he's making here is not a bad point. Trust has been lost to the extent that Republicans do believe that Democrats are going to nuke the filibuster at the first available opportunity. And so the proposal that I have made is not my proposal. My friend Jeremy Boring originally made this proposal, and I think it's right. Republicans should say, we want a constitutional amendment to enshrine the filibuster, the Senate legislative filibuster. We want a constitutional amendment to do that. That requires widespread approval in the Senate to make that a permanent feature of the political landscape. And if we don't get it, then we're nuking the filibuster, because we're not just going to wait around to find out whether your goodwill ends and you decide to nuke the filibuster and destroy the necessary checks and balances that have been on the wane so long in American politics. That, I think, would be a good policy to propose. But the president's proposal that the Republicans nuke the filibuster, I'm going to assume this is a piece of leverage, and the president here is doing this because he's saying to Democrats, listen, if you really want to play hardball, we'll play super duper hardball, and we'll just run you right over. So you may as well get on board, because we'll kill the filibuster and we'll pass the CR. I assume that's what's happening. It's unlikely to actually become reality. There's just not enough senators who are going to destroy the filibuster right now because, basically you'd need 51 senators or 50 plus the vice president to vote to break a tie in order to kill the filibuster. I would assume that there are still 5, 10, 15 Republican senators who are not on board with killing the legislative filibuster in the Senate, probably much, much higher than that. Okay, meanwhile, there's been a lot of talk recently about people who are, quote unquote, splitting the right. One of those people, very clearly, because she's not attempting to hide it, is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene has spent the last several weeks apparently planning for her own presidential run, which, all luck to her. Frankly, I think that would be clarifying. I think that it would be wonderful if Marjorie Taylor Greene ran for president of the United States and won 7% of the vote. I think that would be great because Marjorie Taylor Greene's ideas are not popular ideas with the American people, and it would be fun to watch her try, frankly. She says that she believes she is real MAGA and that other Republicans have strayed. I mean, to be fair, she also thinks that President Trump is not real MAGA, and she's basically said just as much. She's yelling at Republicans all the time. She's going on The View to hang out with people who despise President Trump, despise Republicans, and despise conservatism, and she's being treated with kid gloves. Here was Joy Behar. Okay, here I have a rule. If Joy Behar is saying that you are a wonderful person, like truly great, you've done something wrong in your life. Here is Joy Behar on The View yesterday, glossing MTG.
I have to say, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was on the show yesterday, her timing couldn't have been better. I mean, she's basically turning on the Republicans in several areas. Of course, continuing to say she loves Trump, because why wouldn't you? Because the retribution against her would be horrible. So she stays there. But and then today, the Democrats pulled it out of out of the air and did it. So she was right. She's smarter than we thought.
She's so much smarter because she agrees with Joy Behar. That's why Joy Behar thinks you're smart, is if you agree with Joy Behar, because Joy Behar is the kind of person who legitimately, if intellectual firepower were electrical wattage, could not toast a piece of bread on both sides lightly. Like her saying that she's very smart, Joy Behar saying that you're a smart person is a good indication you are not a very, very smart person. So, there are in fact people who spend all day long firing inside the tents and then presume to proclaim that if you notice that, then somehow that's splitting the party. It's sort of a fascinating phenomenon. Speaking of which, she continued her grievance tour against the Republican Party, of course. She appeared on News Nation last night where she talks about how she yelled at the Speaker of the House.
Like, if you were to be able to talk to Mike Johnson right now, you would tell him what?
Tell him the same thing I told him last week, and I yelled at him on the phone on our GOP conference call.
What'd you say?
Where is our health care plan? It's non-existent. Democrats created this problem years ago, but Republicans have never fixed it. And I said we need to be back at work, and not being in session is basically pathetic.
What did he say to you?
He gave me the same talking points he gives to the press every single day.
So she's clearly for unifying the Republican Party and victory. Clearly, that's what this is all about. Alrighty, folks, coming up, we're going to jump into your questions in the vaunted Ben Shapiro Show mailbag. Remember, in order to have your questions answered or to even see it, you have to be a member. Head on over to our Daily Wire Plus app, become a member, use code Shapiro, and get into it. A ton coming up on today's show. New polls showing that Andrew Cuomo is closing the gap on Zohran Mamdani. What does that mean? Plus, we examine one of the more bizarre videos of the campaign season, Rabbis for Mamdani. Is that a real thing? Spoiler alert, not so much. Plus, we're joined by the Speaker of the House of Representatives about the government shutdown. First, less than 2 weeks ago, we launched our new flagship show, Friendly Fire, right here on Daily Wire Plus. It's me, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, coming together live to debate, discuss, and yes, disagree on the biggest stories making headlines. In our very first episode, we dropped 2 massive announcements, the all-new Daily Wire Lifetime membership and the first look at our upcoming epic, The Pendragon Cycle. Tomorrow night, we're back with an all-new live episode and more big announcements you're not going to want to miss. Plus, our deal of the decade is happening right now. Join Daily Wire Plus for as little as $7 a month at dailywire.com. Watch Friendly Fire live tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern on Daily Wire Plus. Well, folks, there is some good news out of New York. Now, it's not enough good news out of New York, but it's some good news. Apparently, there's a brand new poll in New York that shows that Cuomo is actually catching up to Zohran Mamdani. Andrew Cuomo, the disgraced former governor of New York, who is really the only hope at stopping Zohran Mamdani in the New York mayoral race. Curtis Sliwa sticking around for reasons unknown to anyone but himself and his family. Apparently, this brand new poll that is out from Suffolk University shows that Mamdani no longer leads Cuomo by 20 points or 15 points. That lead is down to 10, and Mamdani is stuck at 44%. Now, typically, when somebody wins that New York mayoral race, they win well over a majority. Here, you have Mamdani at 44, you have Cuomo at 34, and you have Sliwa at 11%. And so, again, there's going to be a lot of talk if Mamdani ends up mayor about why Curtis Sliwa stayed in the race. And this is not an anti-Curtis point. This is just a reality point. Curtis Sliwa is not going to be the next mayor of New York. And if his vote share is larger than the margin of victory for Mamdani, there are going to be a lot of questions to be asked. And again, the main question is going to be asked of Andrew Cuomo, why is he such a terrible candidate? And there'll be big questions of the New York population. Why are you all insipid? But the real question for Sliwa is going to be why you didn't drop out. As David Paleologos, director of the Suffolk University Political Research Center, says, there's one person in New York City whose voters could have an outsized impact on the outcome, and it's Sliwa. So this is the first poll since Mayor Adams, Eric Adams, dropped out of the race. Most of his support bled on over to Andrew Cuomo. It is also the second poll to show Cuomo narrowing the gap with Mamdani since Adams dropped out of the race. A lot of the opposition to Mamdani is materializing as support for Cuomo, which is precisely what you would expect. Because again, it's not like Andrew Cuomo is any great shakes. Mamdani is running a terrible final week of this campaign. Truly an awful, awful final week of this campaign. He has decided that his closing message is going to be that New York City is famous for Islamophobia. And if you don't elect him, it's because you don't like Muslims, which is a wild statement in a city that suffered 9/11, where apparently the only victim of 9/11, according to Zoran Mamdani, was his not aunt. And I say not aunt advisedly because, as it turns out, it was not, in fact, his aunt who was wearing some sort of hijab on the subway and somebody gave him a mean look. According to the New York Post, the aunt, who Zoran Mamdani said was too afraid to wear her hijab on the subways after 9/11, is actually his father's cousin. A distant relative, in other words. Now, how many of your father's cousins do you know? Like a lot of them? My parents have cousins, and we know like maybe one, maybe like that. Kind of strange. The socialist mayoral frontrunner made the revelation during a press conference Monday after critics pointed out that his actual aunt doesn't have a hijab and was in Tanzania during the time period he was talking about. So instead he said, I was speaking about Zahra Fuhi, my father's cousin, who passed away a few years ago. That relative he affectionately called his aunt. Mamdani's campaign, however, did not provide the cousin's full name when asked. Because if they did, then there might be some fact checking as to whether this person was in New York City at the time and whether this person was in fact subject to the predations of evil New Yorkers looking askance at hijab wearers on the New York subway system. And Zoran Mamdani, who has spent his entire life being useless, and now his final closing pitch is, why won't you give me the mayoralty? And if you don't, it's because you're mean to Muslims. That's the closing pitch. I mean, that is the mark of a person who truly feels entitled to everything, is that if you won't give him the mayoralty of the financial center of planet Earth, it must be not because he's a bad candidate, not because he's an out-and-out communist, not because he is a sympathizer with jihadists, but because you are mean to Muslims. So here is Zoran Mamdani doubling, tripling down on this yesterday.
I was speaking about my aunt. I was speaking about Zahra Fuhi, my father's cousin, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And for the takeaway from my more than 10-minute address about Islamophobia in this race and in this city to be the question of my aunt tells you everything about Andrew Cuomo and his inability to reckon with a crisis.
Okay, so it's a crisis of Islamophobia is what's happening here. And you even asking questions about the identity of his aunt, his father's cousin, who he won't even name. If you ask that question, it's because you must hate Muslims. It can't be because you doubt his honesty, because he is, in fact, a manufactured candidate who is smarmy and fake and smug in every single video of him. With the bizarrely conjured emotional moments, with the strange smile that breaks out creepily on his face, like an outtake from Get Out. Like he is a strange candidate, but if you ask questions, it's because you're being mean to him. And that's really the story, isn't it? The real story is that if you don't vote for Zoran Mamdani, it's because you're a big meanie who doesn't like Muslims. You mean person. You mean person. You and your Islamophobia, not voting for the guy who wants to nationalize resources, not voting for the guy who wants to spread every idiotic third-grade secretary idea he ever had across America's most populous city. It's because you're mean. Why don't you just give it to him? Just give it to him. I mean, he's diverse. Give it to him. And if you won't, it's because probably because you're like a white supremacist or a Nazi or something. Here's Zoran Mamdani.
This tells you everything you need to know about the Republican Party. At a time when 4 million Americans are in danger of losing their health care, when the federal government is choosing to price hungry Americans across this country out of their very groceries, their focus is to take on the Muslim guy who won the Democratic primary by 13 points. This is a moment where active duty military families are lining up for food pantries across this entire country. And for Congress people in the Republican Party to see that and say that their answer to it is to try and nullify the results of an election, it tells you everything that you have to know.
You're so mean. You're so mean. I mean, yes, he volunteered to run. Yes, he won the Democratic primary. Yes, he's very likely to be the next mayor of New York. But if you pay attention to that, what you should be paying attention to is all these other issues he wasn't talking about until 5 seconds ago. Look, squirrel. I mean, seriously, what a sad sack candidate he is. And it is a real statement about what a terrible candidate Andrew Cuomo is that he lost to this schmuck in a primary. Truly. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, to talk about this continuing government shutdown. First, have you ever heard of the audience effect? It's the psychological theory that every person's behavior changes when they know they're being watched. We become more rigid, more performative. Even if there isn't anyone telling us what to do, the feeling of watching eyes alters the things we do and say, taking away just a little bit of our freedom without us even noticing. Here's the thing. We are being watched. Every time you use the internet, your ISP is recording everything you do online. Your internet service provider watches what websites you go to, how much time you spend there. They can see everything you're doing, even if you're using a private browser. If you don't want to fall victim to this digital version of the audience effect, well, you don't have to. You can use ExpressVPN. With ExpressVPN, 100% of my online activity is rerouted through secure encrypted servers. This makes it impossible for my ISP to see what I'm doing online. ExpressVPN also hides my IP address, the number that identifies you on the internet. Data brokers use it to build a profile on you and then sell it to marketers and other companies. ExpressVPN is easy to use. It takes one click, and it works on all of your devices, phones, tablets, smart TVs, desktops, and you can have it on up to 14 devices all at once, so you can give the gift of privacy and freedom to your whole family. I've been using ExpressVPN for years. Whenever I'm traveling on public Wi-Fi at an airport, ExpressVPN is making sure my internet activity is safe. Right now, you can get an extra 4 months when you use my special link. Head on over to expressvpn.com/Ben. Get 4 extra months of ExpressVPN. That's expressvpn.com/Ben. Also, thinking about this time of year always reminds me, maybe take a moment, slow down after a busy summer of work, travel, family activities. Falls when I try to intentionally carve out time for the simple comforts of home, quiet weekends, cozy evenings with loved ones. Boll & Branch makes a huge difference in my sleep quality. Whenever I'm on the road and I don't have my Boll & Branch sheets, I just don't sleep as well because their stuff is, in fact, the best. Boll & Branch's bed bundles are perfect for creating your own sanctuary of comfort. With just a click, you get everything you need for an effortless bedroom upgrade, from new sheets and blankets to a complete transformation. There's a bundle option for every kind of refresh and every kind of sleeper, whether you like things cool, cozy, or super soft, and every bundle is made from the highest quality, 100% organic cotton in durable, customizable styles. Plus, everything comes with a 30-night worry-free guarantee, so you can sleep confident you made the right choice for your home and your family. Boll & Branch makes upgrading your bed easier than ever with curated bundles for a sanctuary of comfort. For a limited time, get 20% off bed bundles plus free shipping and returns at bollandbranch.com/Ben. That's Boll & Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/Ben to save up to 20%. Exclusions apply. And just lest you truly believe that Mamdani is some sort of soft-hearted, wonderful person, I just like to point out a clip of him from 2023. You want to know where his ideology comes from? His ideology is deeply, deeply ensconced in the red-green alliance that has characterized the wild left, the alliance between communists and radical jihadists that has characterized so much of the left these days. This is a clip from him in September 2023, explaining that basically his hatred for capitalism springs from his dislike of the quote-unquote Zionists. Here we go.
The importance for me of international solidarity is that it takes me out of the American political landscape and reminds me just how tame some of the things are that I'm actually calling for, that I support. And it reminds me of the necessity of grounding ourselves in the struggles as opposed to the fights around the struggles. For anyone to care about these issues, we have to make them hyperlocal. We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF. We are in a country where those connections abound, especially in New York City. You have so many opportunities to make clear the ways in which that struggle over there is tied to capital's interest over here.
So you see, it's really the Jews in Israel who are tied to the capitalist interests in New York City. And capitalism, of course, is bad. And if you missed it, he said, when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF. This is not 15 years ago, gang. This is 2 years ago. He was a full grown-ass man when he said this sort of stuff. And they're going to elect this guy mayor. But if you point this out, it's because you're mean. It's because you're Islamophobic in some way. Don't point that out. He's a nice man who only cares about affordability. In fact, he said yesterday he's going to deliver affordability. How is he going to deliver affordability? No one knows. But if he just says affordability over and over and over, then affordability will magically appear in New York City. It's like Beetlejuice. If you say affordability 3 times, then magically all of the rents go down. Why? It's amazing. It's like magic. He's a conjurer of affordability.
And I was proud to be on that stage alongside Senator Bernie Sanders, Congressman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Governor Kathy Hochul, Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie. And what I asked of those more than 10,000 New Yorkers yesterday was more. More door knocking, more phone banking, more commitment to this campaign that has already transformed our city and is on the verge of actually delivering affordability. And that is our message to New Yorkers with these final 8 days.
They're on the verge of delivering affordability. You know, just by electing him, everything will become more affordable. Now, maybe that's true because so many people will move out of the city to avoid his horrific tenure. That's possible. Maybe the real estate prices drop, specifically because he's such a crap mayor that everybody who can afford to get out gets out. And now there's some vacancy. Maybe. Or maybe he's making promises he can't actually cash. But that doesn't matter. Because understand, Mamdani is a mood. Okay, Mamdani is not an actual basket of policy priorities. Nobody knows what the hell he's talking about. When he talks about how he's going to freeze housing, he has no idea how he's going to actually be able to do that. He was quizzed by reporters over how he would specifically outmaneuver Mayor Eric Adams' latest plan to stack the Rent Guidelines Board with members who will tank his rent freeze proposal. And he said, we would use the full extent of powers that we would have as mayor with the Rent Guidelines Board. And when asked about how he would do that, he said, I continue to be confident of our ability to deliver a rent freeze. And I continue to be confident that we will be able to match whatever last-minute betrayal Eric Adams tries to concoct. Because we've seen, it's not just that he's actively looking to betray New Yorkers. So the answer is he has no idea how he's going to do any of this because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The reason people support Mamdani is because he's fetch and he's brat. And apparently there are a lot of idiots in New York. And those idiots in New York are fully on board with the idea that if you don't vote for Zohran Mamdani, it must be because you're some sort of racist, or because you hate gay people, or because you hate black people, or because you are one of those capitalist tools. And this is why you have people, I can't even really describe them how they would like to be described. There's a video going around of people who call themselves rabbis supporting Mamdani. Now, I'm just going to point out here that not a single person here knows more about basic Jewish law or Jewish philosophy than my 5-year-old. These people are a joke. Not one of these people is a rabbi in any real sense. Rabbi means teacher. The history of the rabbinate goes back thousands of years, and you have to have like a baseline level of high learning in order to become a rabbi, or at least you're supposed to. That's the basic idea. Also, in traditional Judaism, men are rabbis. Women can't become rabbis. There are other roles that women can fulfill. But putting aside the sex problem here, these women know less about Judaism than my 5-year-old by leaps and bounds. There is no question this is the case. And so trotting out your Jewish identity and wearing it around as a costume, my identity is not your costume, ladies. Trotting around, pretending that you are a rabbi in favor of Zohran Mamdani, a pro-jihadi, pro-Marxist radical, betrays whatever supposed religion you profess to believe. These people are a joke. They are a joke. And the joke, by the way, becomes inherently funny because at the very end, it turns out that the only male rabbi in this particular video is a trans female at the very end, popping his head up to explain that as a trans female rabbi, who, by the way, openly says does not believe in God, is speaking on behalf of the Jews. Okay, the reason I point this out is because there are many idiots and crazy people all across the land, and many of them reside in New York. I'm also pointing this out because if somebody like this ever says, as a Jew, if the only time you as a Jew is when you're supporting someone who legitimately hates Jews, then I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I think that what you are actually doing is just trying to claim minority status because you don't want to be labeled a liberal white lady, which is really what you are unless you're a liberal white man pretending to be a liberal white lady. So this video is going viral yesterday for good reason, because it's nuts, or lack thereof, or maybe including nuts, depending on where you are in the video. Here we go.
Hi, Rabbi. Hi, Rabbi. Hi, Rabbi.
These people are not rabbis.
Hi, Rabbi.
Not rabbis.
Hi.
Not
We're
rabbis.
among the thousands of Jewish New Yorkers who've been out door knocking and phone banking to elect Zohran Mamdani. We're also rabbis.
We know Zohran
They're
will
not.
fight to make our city affordable and safe for our families.
And for our neighbors
know
of all
that.
faiths and backgrounds. As New Yorkers, we're also just people who live here, who don't want to get priced out of this incredible city that we call home.
We know fellow Jews want to be able to afford housing, transportation, and childcare for their families too.
As Jews, as rabbis, as New Yorkers, we believe that all people deserve to thrive. Zohran agrees.
But let's get real. This isn't only about belief. It's about action. So let's build a flourishing city.
Together, let's elect Zohran. Oh, Zohran!
My favorite thing about that is that they come out and they're like, hi, Rabbi. Oh, look, we're all not rabbis. We're all rabbis. And then the thing that they cite as the rationale for supporting Zohran Mamdani is not anything to do with Jewishness. It's because we want lower rent. First of all, you ain't going to get lower rent. Second of all, I mean, if you're going to do the identity politics things here, ladies, if this is your thing, if you're going to like do the as a Jew thing, you might want to make a reference to anything remotely relating to Jewishness as opposed to, as a generic human, I want lower rent. As a rabbi, like, people are deservedly making fun of these people, and they should. But I suppose that this is the new core of the Democrat coalition. The new core of the Democrat coalition is liberal white ladies and people who are angry about minority status in the United States in some way, or have grievances against the majority culture, I suppose. I mean, that's what the polls show. Because it turns out that native-born New Yorkers are voting for Cuomo, and the people who are voting for Mamdani tend to be immigrants, young, and liberal white ladies who proclaim that they're rabbis. And again, in order for me to actually take seriously your claims of Jewishness, you have to show me a scintilla of Jewishness other than you claiming it. Like, I need to know what would make you, in the same way that if you claim, as a Catholic, I love abortion, I'd be like, well, you know, I'm going to need to see your credentials on that one. Just pathetic and deservedly being mocked. It's a Saturday Night Live skit. All right, coming up, AOC and Riley Gaines, they're going at it. AOC, she really is kind of a terrible person. I mean, truly. First, you know, there's a lot of food that I can make. I'm lying. There's only a couple of foods that I can make. I can make like a decent hamburger and I can make eggs. But when you want something beyond, you know, kind of the stuff that you're capable of making, but like really, really good stuff, Cook Unity can make it happen for you. Cook Unity makes it easy to enjoy the meals you crave. Fresh, never frozen, crafted in small batches by real chefs. With tons of options to match your cravings, lifestyle, and dietary needs, you'll always find something delicious. Just head on over to cookunity.com/BenFree or use code BenFree at checkout to snag free premium meals for life. With Cook Unity, you get all the flavor and variety of restaurant quality meals without the hassle of cooking, shopping, or cleanup. Every dish is made using fresh, seasonal ingredients. You can choose from a huge rotating menu of over 300 options, or let the platform make personalized picks just for you. Meals arrive fully cooked and ready to heat in just minutes. So whether you're after comfort food or something nutritious, it's always quick, easy, and way more affordable than takeout. Cook Unity's chef lineup has Food Network favorites, James Beard Award winners, restaurateurs whose names you'd recognize from the best dining scenes around the country. Lena Alcuzzi is one of Cook Unity's great chefs if you're looking for plant-based, holistic foods, or John DeLucy if you're looking for a more modern European meal right here in the United States. It's restaurant quality cooking designed for your everyday life. People on my staff have been using Cook Unity, and let me tell you, they look like happier and like they enjoy the food they're eating. Get comfort and nutrition delivered in every bite, made by award-winning chefs at Cook Unity. Head on over to cookunity.com/BenFree. Enter code BenFree before checkout to get free premium meals for life. That's free premium meals for life by using code BenFree or heading on over to cookunity.com/BenFree. Also, do you guys ever read protein bar labels and feel like you're just reading the ingredients to, you know, like a Hershey bar? Most health bars are packed with unnecessary sugar and chemicals. My team and I have tried countless bars that either tasted not great or left us hungry again within an hour. Luckily, we then found Equip Foods Prime Bar. It's the first of its kind grass-fed beef protein bar with only real food ingredients and absolutely nothing to hide, with 20 grams of clean protein. Starting today, my listeners will receive an exclusive discount on Equip's Prime Bar, which has become our team's favorite protein bar on the market with 20 grams of protein in every bar. It's a lot of protein. Made with just 11 clean ingredients like collagen and colostrum, these bars deliver 20 grams of grass-fed beef protein without the bloat. They're free from whey, seed oils, and artificial additives, and they're naturally sweetened with dates and honey, so they taste like dessert without the guilt. Producer Justin, he basically is chowing down on these all the time because, we're constantly on the go. He needs his protein. If you want to try the cleanest protein bar on the market that already sold out once, go to equipfoods.com/Ben Shapiro. Use code Ben Shapiro at checkout to get 25% off one-time purchases or 40% off your first subscription order for a limited time. That's EQUIPfoods.com/Ben Shapiro. Use code Ben Shapiro at checkout. Speaking of Saturday Night Live skits, Kathy Hochul, who you remember replaced Andrew Cuomo. She should be backing Andrew Cuomo because if it weren't for Andrew Cuomo, she wouldn't be governor of New York. Kathy Hochul ended up as governor of New York because Andrew Cuomo couldn't stop grabbing ass or killing old people, and he ran out of old people. And she ended up becoming the governor of New York. Well, now she's endorsing Zohran Mamdani. And everyone booed her in the crowd, which is hilarious. And then she tried to interpret that as a chant in favor of the Buffalo Bills, which was awkward. Here's what it sounded like.
I thought they were saying "Let's go Bills." I wasn't sure. I mean, when you're up there, I heard some noise. I heard a lot of cheers, but later on, it became clear to me that there is I know there's passion for that.
So they booed her, and then they started chanting "Tax the rich." That's what they're actually taxing. That's what they're actually chanting. And then Mamdani came out, grabbed her hand, raised it, and walked her out because everyone hates Kathy Hochul. But this is the nature of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is made up of a bunch of more traditional, they're still very, very left-wing, more traditional liberals who are making way for the Marxists. Because every revolutionary movement is willing to break the movement in order to take over the movement. That's always the threat, is that Mamdani and the rest of his Marxist pro-jihadi crowd is going to break the movement in order to take over the movement, that they'll sit it out, that they won't get involved in politics anymore. And so constantly, because they're willing to make those sort of extreme threats about their own side, the liberals, the good little liberals, are willing to pat them on the head and give them a hug and talk about how really, yeah, we don't agree with them, but really their great sin, if they have any sin, is that they're just too passionate. They're just too passionate. And this is why Democrats continue to maintain this ridiculous government shutdown. Truly ridiculous. It is old school mainstream left-wingers who are doing the work of the radicals in their party because they're afraid that if they don't, then they'll get eaten. Led by Chuck Schumer. Now, again, Chuck Schumer has no interest in a government shutdown. Chuck Schumer knows this is dumb politics. We're about to hit the snap cutoff end of this week. And when that happens, 42 million Americans are going to be short on their food stamps. Now, again, it is insane that there are 42 million Americans on food stamps. That is a wild statistic. And the amount of government dependency in this country is just way too high, period. But they are, in fact, dependent on food stamps. And when those cut off, there's going to be hell to pay for Democrats who won't just vote for continuing resolution. And yet Chuck Schumer continues to do the bidding of the AOC, Zohran Mamdani wing of his party. Here was Chuck Schumer yesterday, the Senate Minority Leader.
Donald Trump says there's no money to pay hungry kids workers. But he's spending $40 billion to bail out Argentina, $300 billion on his vanity ballroom, $172 million on 2 luxury jets for Kristi Noem, hundreds of millions for outfitting his foreign jet, but nothing to help hungry kids. What war priorities? What a bubble this president lives in, apart, away, and not caring about the trauma the American people are facing when it comes to health care.
So this is his pitch. His final pitch is Trump is doing a ballroom. Really? Like that's going to explain why you're doing what you're doing. And then, hilariously, Chuck Schumer's like, why does the president keep going on foreign trips? Maybe because he's doing things on those foreign trips. Like, for example, finalizing a peace deal in Gaza and maybe in the region, or going over to Malaysia to broker a peace deal over there. Like he's supposed to, what, sit home and stare at you, Chuck Schumer? All right, here we go.
Starting this Saturday, tens of millions of Americans face the specter of financial crisis, all while Donald Trump is dancing on the tarmac in Malaysia. Donald Trump may be having a nice time abroad, but people here at home are dreading open enrollment.
Oh, boy. Okay, good luck with this. President Trump, for his part, he says, listen, you guys want to keep going with this? Sure, but what you really want is just us to spend a bunch of money on illegal immigrants.
The Democrats should just do a simple extension. That's the best way. The Democrats are holding it up. They want $1.5 trillion for people that came out of prisons, for illegal aliens that come into our country. We don't want to do that because that will really hurt the health care that we have in our country.
Yeah, well, again, this seems like a bad move for Democrats. And in fact, according to Politico, the Democratic shutdown movement is fraying. According to Politico, Democrats grappled Monday with the first major fraying of their coalition amid the government shutdown, with a federal employee union calling for them to stand down 4 weeks into the standoff. There was no immediate surrender from party leaders, but the union's plea forced many Democratic lawmakers into a defensive crouch. Their number 2 Senate leader said it would be subject of internal conversations this week, with bipartisan talks all but ground to a halt. Senator Dick Durbin said it has a lot of impact. They've been our friends. And he says Democrats take them seriously. The push by the American Federation of Government Employees for Congress to immediately pass a clean stopgap funding bill, which is exactly what Republicans are offering, is among a laundry list of pressure points that are bearing down on lawmakers. By the end of the week, SNAP runs out, and Americans who get health insurance through Obamacare will confront premium spikes as open enrollment starts without a deal on how to extend soon-to-expire subsidies. Senator Mark Warner is showing some signs of caving. He is from Virginia. He says, I think we can still deal with healthcare and SNAP, but shutdown is a real challenge. Federal employees feel like they've been abused, and it's going now weeks without pay. Asked whether the American Federation of Government Employees statement would change his position, he said, let's see. So the pressure is building on Democrats. It is quite possible that they fold this week, which again, they should. This is a really stupid hill for them to die upon. Joining us on the line to discuss is Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Speaker Johnson, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, my friend. Great to be with you as always.
So let's talk about the status on the shutdown. Democrats seem continuously intransigent here. We are now multiple weeks into the shutdown. We're about to hit the SNAP cutoff in terms of funding for some 42 million Americans who are on SNAP, which is an insane number. Where do we stand right now?
Well, we stand in the same place we've been for 28 days. The Democrats are dug in the Senate. And I think it's really important for all of us to analyze the simple facts. People forget the Democrats are out breathlessly stating that Republicans are in charge of government, so this must somehow be our fault. That's partially true, but we're not in charge of the Senate. You have to have 60 votes in the Senate. We only have 53 Republicans. So the simple, clear fact is we must have Democrats to reopen the government. The other fact is they've now voted 13 times to keep it closed. And the big question is why? Why would they be doing this? You know, Ben, I think the answer is very clear for anyone who's paying attention, as exhibited most recently by Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat leader in the House's endorsement of Mamdani in New York on Friday. They are motivated by fear. They fear the radical left base, the Marxists in their party. They know that they will be challenged for their own seats. It is their own political survival they have put in front of the needs and the desperate demands of the country. So they care more about the Marxists and the pain that they'll endure from them than the pain they're inflicting on the American people. And that's clear for everyone to see.
You know, Speaker Johnson, one of the things that's really astonishing about all this is, of course, their list of demands basically just involves rolling back a bill that they lost. I mean, the one big beautiful bill, which was a major legislative accomplishment by you and by Senate Majority Leader Thune and President Trump. They don't like it. And so now I guess their goal is they want to roll back many provisions of the OBBB in order to, I suppose, achieve a victory they couldn't have achieved any other way. And they are holding up the workings of government in order to do this. I've never seen a shutdown where the side that was demanding change was not blamed for the shutdown. Typically speaking, the side that is calling for a continuing resolution is usually considered properly, I think, by the American people to be the side that actually would like to keep the government open because it is just a continuation of government funding at current levels. It's Democrats who are demanding major changes. What are the major changes they're demanding here for those unfamiliar?
Yeah, you're right on both counts. First of all, this is the first time in history that any party has had the audacity to shut the government down over a clean continuing resolution, clean CR. And that's really an important point. The Republicans are not demanding anything, Ben. This is Biden-era policies and spending that we were made to continue until now. We're working through the appropriations process to change all those priorities, but we hadn't finished that that process yet. And so the clean CR simply continues exactly what has been done, what the Democrats have already voted for. They have no excuse. So what they're doing, again, motivated out of fear by the far left base, they can't face the angry mobs and the crowds and all of that. So they've decided to ask for the moon. And I mean, it's wild partisan spending priorities. Not only do they want us to restore free health care for illegal aliens paid for by U.S. taxpayers to the tune of almost $200 billion. They also want to give back money to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, for example. They want $500 million to go to that cause. They want to give money to all these boondoggle foreign spending priorities again. I mean, it's crazy things. They want, $4 million, for example, one of the line items that would go to LGBTQ whatever the acronym is, plus, awareness campaigns in foreign countries. They want to spend money in the Horn of Africa to promote feminist ideals. I mean, all this kinds of stuff that the American people have had enough of. During the DOGE effort, early in this Congress and the administration, we recognized all the amazing abuses and fraud and waste that was being spent, and we fixed all that. They want to restore it. And by the way, they want to cut the $50 billion the Republicans put in that big bill to prop up our rural hospitals. They can't claim they're about health care. They want to take that away from red states and rural areas. So it's filled with all sorts of nonsense that they absolutely know, Ben, we could never go for. And that is the point. They want to shut the government down because they think it's going to hurt President Trump and the Republicans. But the American people are smarter than they give them credit for.
Now, Speaker Johnson, one of the things about this shutdown that I find fascinating is the amount of attention that's paid to the shutdown outside of the Beltway, outside of the media, seems to be fairly low for most Americans, at least comparatively with other government shutdowns. I think part of that is because with Republicans in charge, there's been an attempt to mitigate the effects of the shutdown. Usually when Democrats are in charge, if there is some sort of shutdown, Democrats in the White House, Barack Obama did this, Joe Biden did the same thing. There is usually an attempt to maximize the amount of pain that Americans are suffering. So I'm old enough to remember when Barack Obama literally shut down outdoor World War II memorials that required no actual staffing in order to sort of maximize the pain that Americans were feeling over a government shutdown. Republicans seem to be trying to minimize that. There have been several bills that have been promoted in the House and the Senate that would have continued to pay members of the military, for example, would have continued to pay certain tranches of federal employees, keep the FAA working, and all the rest. And Democrats keep shutting that down in an attempt to maximize the amount of pain. So in this situation, it's not just that Democrats are calling for changes. They are the ones who are attempting to maximize the pain from their own refusal to reopen the government.
Absolutely right. I mean, think of it as a control panel of dials, that is at the White House. In a shutdown situation, the executive branch has all those dials. And you're right. Barack Obama turned them all up to level 10 immediately. I mean, remember, they put yellow-red crime tape around the World War II memorial out on the National Mall. They wouldn't even let veterans who traveled into Washington get close to the memorial because they wanted it to hurt so badly. And unlike the Democrats, Republicans do not take pleasure in hurting the American people. I mean, you've heard them in their own words say the quiet parts out loud. Chuck Schumer literally said here 6 or 7 days ago that every day of the shutdown gets better for us, meaning his party. You had the number 2 ranked Democrat in the House just the other day say, yeah, we understand it's going to cause pain, but that's really the only time we have leverage. They admit that they're doing this intentionally and that they want people to hurt. Conversely, you got the President Trump who doesn't want it. He's moving money around trying to find unobligated funds to cover troop pay and to cover SNAP benefits and all these other things. But we are running out of that money. And this is a desperate, serious time. Real Americans feeling real hardships because the Democrats are here playing politics and running away from the Marxists and their party. That is just clearly and simply exactly what's going on. And history will tell the story here of who imposed this pain. I think people are waking up to it.
Speaker Johnson, one of the things you've mentioned a couple of times here is the Democrats being hawked to their left wing. It is very clear the Democratic Party, unfortunately, continues to move to the left and away from even the moderates in their own caucus. There's been talk about attempts in the Senate to primary Senator John Fetterman, who remains a very popular senator in Pennsylvania. He's a Democrat who votes almost all the time with the Democrats. I think he's voted with President Trump some 6% of the time, but because he opposes the government shutdown and likes Israel, this means that he is not in fine fettle with the Democratic base. Obviously, Zohar Mamdani and AOC are sort of leading a wing of the Democratic Party that seems to be trying to take control of the Democratic Party with very little objection from sort of the more mainstream Democratic Party. What do you make of the future of a Democratic Party that continues to hand itself over to these people?
The party is committing suicide. in a political sense. They truly are, and we're watching it develop day by day now. This is not your father's Democratic Party. I mean, my grandparents wouldn't recognize this party at all. They have taken a hard turn to the left, and they have their pedal to the metal on that. They're going all the way. And you saw that they've endorsed Mamdani for mayor in New York City. I mean, you know what this guy is for. He's a radical leftist, a true Marxist in his ideology and his belief. And not only does he hate Israel and engage in anti-Semitism and endorse that kind of anti-Semitic speech, but I mean, he wants to defund the police and legalize prostitution and take over the means of production. I mean, the guy is a true communist, and they're supporting that. They're cheering it along. I saw his rally, a clip from his rally that he did at AOC and Bernie, where they stood up on the stage and literally promised everything for free to everyone. That's never ended very well in history, but they're not students of history. But we are. The point is that the chasm is so wide now between the two parties. You're actually seeing a split screen in American politics and society. And on one side, you think of it, in the last 9.5 months, this Congress and the second Trump administration, President Trump and Republicans are delivering for the people. We have cut taxes, cut regulations, eliminated fraud, waste, and abuse on a massive scale. We solved the border crisis. We're solving the crime crisis around the country. President Trump is literally resolving armed conflicts and wars around the globe. That's just 9 months. And what have the Democrats done in that same time period? They shut the government down. And they've assaulted some ICE officers, and they've encouraged violence in the political sphere. The stark contrast is so clear, and I think people see that. And hardworking Americans understand who is here every day working for them, trying to make their lives better, and who is engaging in this political obstruction and hugging up to the communists. I mean, when we get into this midterm election next year, we have quite a story to tell, and I think the facts speak for themselves. And it's a great time to be alive when you have the facts.
Speaker Johnson, when we look at the future of this shutdown, can you lay out for us sort of the calendar of the things that are slated to happen if the shutdown continues? Because while the shutdown has not been, I think, at the forefront of most people's imagination right now, that's going to change very shortly as the calendar progresses.
It is really by the end of this week, because the heroic measures that we discussed that the president and the administration have taken to mitigate the pain, we're running out of those funding sources. So there's a real question, as you and I speak right here, about whether the troops will get paid at the end of this month. We got them paid mid-month. We don't know if the next check is there. We had some benevolent donor give, everyone knows famously, $130 million. That's really a drop in the bucket when you have so many active duty military personnel, 1.4 million of them. That's a lot of funds that are needed to make sure their families are paid. And think of it, these are young soldiers and airmen and sailors many of whom are deployed around the world, defending American interest and our safety. And they've left young families at home. And they're, for example, young moms. I know in my district, I have a big military district, 2 major bases there. And we've got young families, young moms with, 2 or 3 kids, and they live paycheck to paycheck. And they're not going to get that paycheck because the Democrats are playing games. You have TSA agents and Border Patrol agents and air traffic controllers. Guess what? If you have plans to travel in the coming weeks, you better factor in delays and maybe canceled flights, because as Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy said here in a press conference a couple days ago with me, he wants you to be on time, but he'd rather you be late than jeopardize your safety. So if we don't have people in the towers because they're not getting paid and the stress level's too high, they're going to cancel the flights. They have no choice. So it's just going to reverberate all the way through the economy and to every community around the country. SNAP benefits are going to dry up November 1. We have 42 million Americans who depend upon that for food. Literally, it's food stamps as we used to know it. That funding is no longer going to be available. We had the Small Business Administrator, Kelly Loeffler, with us at our press conference yesterday, and she explained how small businesses, which provide like 99% of the jobs in America, are really struggling because so many of them have government contracts that have been delayed. And it just goes on and on throughout the society. You have veteran services, health services for the elderly and disabled. All the things that the federal government provides have been turned off by the Democrats. And it cannot be emphasized enough, Ben. We have voted 13 times to open the government. They have voted 13 times to shut it down. And they have no way out of it. They have painted themselves into a corner. Everything they're asking for cannot be delivered, and they know that. And so it seems they're taking great pleasure in causing all this chaos around the country, and it's just disgusting to us.
Well, Speaker Johnson, obviously we'll keep an eye on everything that's happening. We appreciate your stalwartness and your leadership in the House of Representatives. You have a very rough job, and you've done an amazing job with that very, very difficult job, as we've discussed many times before. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for stopping by.
Great to be with you, my friend. Keep up the great work.
We'll get to some more on the foreign front in a moment. First, I always assumed restless sleep was inevitable. Night after night, tossing, turning, waking up with my back aching. You know, you think that's how sleep is supposed to be, because what do you care? You're just like, you're on a mattress. It's fine. But here's the thing. Helix Sleep makes a mattress just for you, and it changes your sleep quality. It's been transformative for me. Now, I easily fall asleep in minutes, even as the weather gets colder and, you know, the stress levels get higher. What makes Helix different is they don't just sell you a random mattress. They actually match you with the perfect mattress for your body and sleep style. Whether you're a side sleeper, back sleeper, somewhere in between, they've got you covered. They make it so simple to get your best night's sleep every single night. All you have to do is take their sleep quiz and get matched with a custom mattress based on your body type and sleep preferences. And trust me, when you find the right match, you'll wonder how you ever slept on anything else. Again, I have a firm but breathable mattress. That means that my back is feeling great and I am not overheating at night. Right now, Helix is offering a great sale for you. Visit helixsleep.com/Ben to get 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/Ben for 20% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. Again, just visit helixsleep.com/Ben for this exclusive offer. The news might not sleep, but at least now I do with Helix. Also, let me show you this book. This is a book. It is a book by my friend, Andrew Klavan. And Andrew is a great writer, truly a great writer. And his new book is fantastic. Love, Betrayal, Deadly Secrets, and a Conspiracy that spans from Oklahoma to Connecticut. Andrew Klavan's all-new book, After That, The Dark, is out today. It's the 5th Cameron Winter mystery. It's probably the best yet. Winter's past and present collide in the most dangerous way possible. He'll do anything to protect the woman he loves. It's already receiving praise, including a starred review in Publishers Weekly. You can secure your copy of After That, The Dark now at dailywire.com/Klavan. If you want a signed copy, you can get yours only available at the Daily Wire shop. Go to dailywire.com/Klavan to order After That, The Dark today. Alrighty, it's time for some fast facts. Well, we begin with Joe Biden. So Joe Biden is back out there talking. And honestly, it's a miracle of modern medicine that he is, because clearly the former president is ailing. Never forget, they tried to run this person for president of the United States, telling you that he was healthy and fine and everything was going to be fine if you made him president again. It is currently what would have been 10 months into his second term. And the man does not look great. Here was Joe Biden yesterday.
Folks, we can't kid ourselves. We are in one of those moments right now. In my over 50 years in elected public life, this is the worst I've seen it. If Ted were here today, he'd still be fighting like hell, but his optimism would be surely tested. Because truth be told, our very democracy is at stake, in my view.
And we'll leave aside all the jokes about Ted Kennedy and Chappaquiddick right here, but I'm just going to point out that Joe Biden does not look great. Karine Jean-Pierre, meanwhile, his former press secretary, the worst press secretary in American history, by far, no close competitors. She has a brand new book out titled Independent, a look inside a broken White House outside the party lines. She's left the Democratic Party. She has a hilarious interview over at The New Yorker with one Isaac Chotiner, who's a pretty terrible columnist over there. And it's really, really, really funny. Like, it's really funny because Chotiner does not understand for the life of him what she objects to about Democrats now criticizing Joe Biden's health. So he says, you feel like you had to leave the Democratic Party because of the way it treated Joe Biden. How did it treat Joe Biden? And she says, I call it a betrayal. And the reason I say this, and I really want people to understand my perspective and where I come from and the role that I played in those 3 weeks, from the debate to the president deciding that he was no longer going to be at the top of the ticket and handing over the baton, is that I was the person who was standing on that podium behind that lectern, having to take in all the hard questions on this. Rightfully so. And I was watching what Democratic leadership was doing. It was an all-out, full-on campaign to embarrass him, to push him out. And I just thought to myself, wow, you don't have that much time left this election year. And I thought to myself, this man is one of the most decent people that I know. And objectively, it was a good presidency. Some have even said he did more in one term than most presidents do in two. So I just didn't understand why this was happening. And Chotiner says, you said that the party was trying to undermine Biden. What do you think they were doing and why? And she said, well, I mean, I just laid it out. I said there was an obvious campaign. You just had to watch. And Chotiner said, sure, but why were they doing that? And she said, because they believed that he needed to step aside. There's more to this than just that period of time. This is very layered, right? There's a period of time that I questioned what was happening and how do we treat our own? How do we treat people who are decent people? And then you also have to think about how I'm thinking about this as a black woman who is part of the LGBTQ community and living in this time where I also don't think Democrats leadership is protecting vulnerable people in the way that it should. So she gets stuck in a question and she just starts babbling about how she's a gay black woman. Yeah, she was a great presser. A solid choice there by President Biden. Really good thinking there by President Biden. And then Chotiner says, sorry, I'm not trying to be dense. To be fair to Chotiner, he can be dense by accident. I mean, he's dense nearly all the time. But he says, sorry, I'm not trying to be dense. I'm a little unclear about what this has to do with Democratic leaders and many Democrats in the country thinking that Joe Biden was going to lose to Donald Trump, which was what all the polls showed, and therefore thinking he should be replaced. And she said, okay, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Nobody knows anything. Nobody knows what would have happened. People also thought that if you replaced Joe Biden, we were going to win or have a better chance of winning. Millions of people who showed up in 2020 didn't show up in 2024. We can't forget there's an incumbency issue as well. This is real. There are like several G10 countries with incumbents who did not get reelected. There was an incumbency issue as well. And Chotiner says, I'm not sure what you're saying. And she says, no, wait a minute. It's like an Abbott and Costello routine. It's like, who's on first? Who's the White House press secretary? Unbelievable. She says, no, wait a minute. You are saying that this was their thinking and they were kind of predicting, but nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew Joe Biden was going to win in 2020. Nobody knew what was going to happen in 2024. People believed in their hearts Kamala was going to win. They believed it. They saw the polling and they thought she was going to win. Looking at the polling, nobody knew anything. I'm only bringing up polls because you brought up the polls to me. And then Chotiner says, you said you were speaking as a black woman who's part of the LGBTQ community. And I think people were and she interrupts and she says, I'm talking about it in this moment too. I do not feel seen in the party because I think they're throwing the LGBTQ community under the bus. They're not fighting enough for migrants and immigrants. You have to be a Big Ten party. You have to fight for everyone. And Chotiner keeps saying this. I just don't understand. You argue Trump is a threat to democracy. A lot of people thought Biden was not the best person to go up against Trump. Shouldn't those people have tried to give Democrats the best chance to replace Trump? You're talking about Biden like loyalty was owed to him. Isn't loyalty owed to the country? And she says, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying this is not how you treat somebody. And Chotiner says, is this a matter of how you treat someone or a matter of putting the country first? And she says, wait a minute. Treating somebody with dignity is not the same as loyalty. I mean, the way he was treated, I had never. If you had seen something like that in the Democratic Party, please point that out. And he says, so what was an example of the way he was treated? And she says, I mean, it was nasty articles that were coming out daily. And he says, so you'd think asking him to step aside was okay, but there shouldn't have been nasty articles. And she says, look, what I'm saying is it shouldn't have happened that way. And Chotiner says, so it should have happened or it shouldn't have happened? And she says, wait. I don't think it should have happened. I believe that we should have done everything we could, regardless of who was at the top of the ticket, and fought extremely hard. And just goes on like this, like the remainder of the interview. And this is the person that Joe Biden chose to be his press secretary. Yes, he was not a good president. Yes, he was senile. Yes, it was all bad. And congrats to the Democrats on elevating terrific employees like Karine Jean-Pierre. Okay, meanwhile, what is the future of the Democratic Party? Well, the future of the Democratic Party is very likely AOC. I'm just pointing that out. That is the future of the Democratic Party, and AOC is a truly despicable human being. So our friend Riley Gaines, of course, the NCAA champion swimmer, she tweeted out a picture of Bernie, Zoran, and AOC at this rally, and she said, we're being destroyed from within, which, I mean, true. And AOC then promptly replied to Riley Gaines, maybe if you channeled all this anger into swimming faster, you wouldn't have come in fifth. Okay. So first of all, let's be clear. AOC, the amount of work that AOC has put into her political career pales in comparison to the amount of work that people actually have to put into becoming NCAA competitive swimmers. I mean, Riley was swimming hours a day from the time she was a small child in order to compete at that level. AOC has never done anything remotely like that. She was selected by the Justice Democrats to run in a primary where she won something like 17,000 votes. And then she was immediately elevated into stardom because she is a decent looking person who is young and Latina. That is the entire story of AOC. And now, of course, Bernie is touting her because she's basically his meat puppet. Second of all, Riley Gaines's entire complaint is not that she finished fifth. Her complaint is that she was competing against a man, like an actual biological man, in Leah Thomas. And the fact that AOC is perfectly willing to make fun of that, it's because she is rather a trash human. I mean, what happened to female solidarity? What happened? So you're fine with men beating women in swimming, so long as the women being beaten disagree with you politically. That's AOC's take. So Riley quite properly called her out on Fox News last night. And then AOC responded by attacking her again on Twitter, saying that she doesn't have to debate Riley Gaines because Riley suggested, hey, you want to talk about this? We can debate about all of this. We can do that. And then AOC was like, no, I will. You're a loser. I'm not going to debate. That's the person Democrats are choosing going forward, because progressivism and youth and energy and fresh-facedness and ethnic diversity and all the rest of this sort of stupidity. Meanwhile, Gavin Newsom left out there in the cold by himself as a white lizard person, incapable of generating enough enthusiasm or heat. Here was Gavin Newsom.
You can lose this country. No bull. It's not the rule of law anymore. It's the rule of Don.
Right.
He doesn't give a shit about the law.
Right.
I mean, he's already taken. Congress doesn't exist. They're completely supine. They're on their back.
Again, anybody who believes that Newsom is going to be the nominee, I have significant doubts. I have very, very significant doubts. Democrats are having to come up with new strategies for freaking out their base. So they are trotting out the idea that Donald Trump is going to run for a third term. Now, let me be clear. The only person on the right who is talking about this is Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is a grifter. Steve Bannon has always been a grifter. It is what he does. Steve Bannon is an attention. He is the entire Amsterdam red light district of attention. Steve Bannon. He will say anything in order to maintain street cred with President Trump and in order to maintain himself at the center of American politics, despite the fact that he was kicked out the door by the president last term and named Sloppy Steve as a result. And so Steve Bannon out there retailing the bizarre and stupid idea that Donald Trump is going to run for a third term, presumably so that Bannon can, I don't know, have an iron in the fire in 2028 himself, perhaps. It's really dumb. The media, of course, are grabbing that and paying attention to it as though it's a real strategy in order to try and alarm Democratic voters. And so this is the new shtick, is Democrats claiming that Trump isn't going to leave the White House. Yes, he will. Yes, he will. He served 2 terms. He's happy with having served 2 terms. There is no constitutional provision that allows for a third term for President Trump. This is really stupid. But I guess Democrats got to do something to jazz up their base.
Nobody's going to succeed him. He's going to succeed himself. Let's just be real. He's not building that ballroom because he's planning on leaving. He's not going anywhere, and nobody's going to get him out of there. And by the way, the Supreme Court says you can't run again. He will just ignore the courts. And I'm happy to see Marco Rubio without Steve Witkoff as our Secretary of State, so I'm happy to see that he's appeared and popped up somewhere. But he's not going to be the nominee. J.D. Vance is not going to be the nominee because Donald Trump is not going anywhere.
That's Julie Roginski. No, that's just wrong. Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg doing the same thing. This is slop for the masses. Whether you're doing it on the right or on the left, Donald Trump ain't going to be president in 2029. This is silly.
So just so we're clear, you have nothing to say about any of this. Just understand that, okay? Republicans have pretty much given him free rein up till now. Are they going to let this happen? Are y'all going to let it happen? Just asking.
Oh, yeah. We will unite to stop a third term that can't possibly happen legally. Just to clarify that Steve Bannon and all the rest of the left-wing crew claiming Trump's going to run in 2028, that they're grifters, I decided that I was going to ask Comet, my sponsors, a new web browser by Perplexity, about this very question. Are there any plausible legal strategies by which a 2-term president could run for a third term under the Constitution? Answer, no. There are no plausible legal strategies by which a 2-term president could run for a third term under the current U.S. Constitution. The 22nd Amendment explicitly states that no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and constitutional scholars widely agree the prohibition is clear and comprehensive. The 22nd Amendment, ratified in 1951, restricts any individual from being elected president more than twice. Suggestions, such as running as VP and ascending to the presidency after resignation, are barred by the 12th Amendment, which states that no person ineligible for the presidency may serve as vice president. Some academic discussions have considered rare technical scenarios related to succession and eligibility. None are viewed as feasible. Any attempt would almost certainly be challenged and blocked legally. In other words, the people who are telling you this kind of stuff, you shouldn't listen to them because they're lying to you for clicks or for power or for whatever. And they're making you actively stupider. This is your campaign. Good luck to all of you. Now, meanwhile, the only thing that theoretically could, as I've said many times, actually push AOC or the Democrats back into office would be economic downturn. That does not seem to be in the offing, at least in the immediate future, according to the Wall Street Journal. From trade deals and foreign elections to merger announcements to corporate earnings, investors are finding plenty of reasons to be happy. Stocks hit fresh records on Monday, marking a significant pickup in momentum after a bumpy stretch in which tariff fears and worries about loan losses at regional banks weighed on major indices. The optimism is not limited to U.S. markets. Benchmarks in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan notched new records on Monday, while the Shanghai Composite closed at its highest level in more than 10 years. Argentine stocks rocketed 22% higher, powered by a decisive win for President Javier Milei in the country's midterm elections. Jed Ellerbrook, portfolio manager at Argent Capital Management, said there's a lot of stuff in the good column and not a lot in the bad column. Stocks were lifted by hopes for improving trade relations between the United States and China. Worries ease. Stock indices have recovered since concerns just a few weeks ago over trade imbalances. Ellerbrook said investors have had no choice but to get comfortable with President Trump's negotiating style and his preference for doing trade deals publicly. And there's been a strong start to earnings season. There are some economic data releases like the October jobs report that have been delayed due to the government shutdown, but there are better than expected profits at major companies. So again, the economy looks to be chugging along. In the very near future, the Federal Reserve is going to lower those interest rates again, which will create more liquidity in the economy. Meanwhile, companies are, in fact, reporting larger profits because of technology, because of robots, because of AI. Amazon has announced job cuts of 14,000 workers on Tuesday. That's a first move in layoffs that are expected to affect as many as 30,000 corporate jobs, according to people familiar with the matter. The thousands of corporate pink slips going out on Tuesday, according to the Journal, cut across the organization, hitting human resources, cloud computing, advertising, and a number of other business units. And again, the goal here, presumably, is for Amazon to repurpose some of those people. So apparently Amazon offers the most employees 90 days to look for a new role internally. And it won't be a surprise, actually, to see the economy continue to go up while unemployment numbers also go up thanks to transitions in the job market, thanks to AI and technology. And that's sort of natural. When you have tech transitions, people in some of the old industries are going to lose their jobs, and then they will find new industries. That does not mean that AI kills the market. It doesn't mean that AI kills the entire jobs market. It does mean that there are going to be some bumpy points here along the road. Okay, meanwhile, on the foreign front, Javier Milei's big win, that shocking win, spells a new future for Argentina. According to the Wall Street Journal, for decades, the poor suburbs that ring Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires, powered the leftist Peronist movement. On Sunday, they made a historic shift against Peronism that propelled President Javier Milei to a surprise victory in midterm congressional elections. The Argentine poor, whom Eva Perón lionized as the country's heart and soul, largely stayed home in a stinging rebuke to the Peronist movement that has dominated politics here for 80 years. At the same time, middle-class voters mobilized to rescue Milei and his free market revolt. Milei gave voters a choice: stick with his brand of self-described shock therapy for Argentina's ills, or face the familiar economic ruin seen under the Peronists in the past. And good for Argentine voters. Truly an amazing, amazing result for Javier Milei. He won 41% to 32% for the opposition. An unexpectedly strong mandate overhauling an ailing economy with the financial firepower of the Trump administration. So again, that was a strong move by the Trump administration to basically say to the Argentine voting population, listen, folks, you want money and liquidity in your country, you're going to need a solid economic plan going forward. That does not happen if Milei's not the man in charge. That isn't leveraging Argentina. That is just reality. Good for Javier Milei, good for the world. Meanwhile, according to the Wall Street Journal, even while the president is trying to negotiate a trade deal with China, China is trying to up the ante on pressuring the United States over Taiwan. That is because China is, in fact, a geopolitical enemy of the United States, not merely an opponent. According to the Wall Street Journal, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said over the weekend that Americans shouldn't worry that the administration is going to get favorable treatment or trade in exchange for walking away from Taiwan. No one is contemplating that. But Xi's big ask has been that the United States formally oppose independence for Taiwan. Right now, there's a policy of what we call strategic ambiguity, where the United States does not actually say what it thinks on the issue of Taiwan. Acknowledging China's position that Taiwan is part of China would mean that if China were to invade Taiwan, it would be very difficult to make the case that that invasion should be resisted. The United States, according to the Wall Street Journal editorial board, does not need to clarify its policy on whether it would defend Taiwan in a crisis, but a concession to Xi on independence would be self-defeating for Trump's goals. Trump wants the island to spend more on defense, but endorsing Xi's view would undermine morale and tell the Taiwanese that attempting to defend itself is futile, which is exactly what Beijing wants. The Taiwan Relations Act of 1979 says, quote, any effort to determine the future of Taiwan by other than peaceful means, including by boycotts or embargoes, would be of grave concern to the United States. Right now, the Chinese are trying to intimidate the Taiwan Straits, not Taiwan directly. It'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. I believe the president will, in fact, stand up against Chinese predations here. Already joining us on the line to discuss what is, I think, the major issue in American life. Right now, we are seeing history wiped away. We are seeing an American populace that doesn't know its own traditions. And that is how you end up with a Zoran Mamdani in office or an AOC as a presidential frontrunner. Joining us on the line to discuss all this is the author of a brand new book called The Golden Thread. It's a phenomenal book. Professor Hankins, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to join you, Ben. I'm an original member of the Daily Wire. I just wanted you to know that I was a founding member, yeah.
Wow, I mean that says a lot, considering there are not a lot of I would assume faculty members at Harvard University who are founding members of the Daily Wire. So that is deeply appreciated. So let's talk about your book, A Golden Thread: A History of the Western Tradition, that you joined with Ellen Guelzo in writing. It is a phenomenal piece of work. I mean, first of all, it's just beautiful. The thing is large. It's filled with imagery, just gorgeous imagery. It's in full color. It's wonderful. But why don't we begin with what drove it? Because there has been a loss of history, not just on the left, but also on the right, a willingness to sort of wipe away history, pretend that it doesn't exist, or at least ignore it, pretend that it doesn't matter. What drove you to write A Golden Thread?
Well, basically, my motivation was that we're losing our civilization. We're declining into this state of techno-barbarism. And in this state of cultural Alzheimer's that we're in, we've got a series of very serious civilizational problems, starting with the fact that we can't talk to each other anymore. We don't have any common historical vocabulary to do that. You know, I teach what are supposed to be the best students in the country, and I constantly meet up with the fact that they don't know things that one would have taken for granted at a high school education 2 generations ago. So they don't know what the Reformation is. They don't know what the Renaissance is. They don't know anything about Greece or Rome. I mean, some of them know some things, but the idea that they don't have a connected sense of what the West is, because they teach global history in high school, and they just teach a piece of this, piece of that, go into the next 10 years, teach a bit of this and that. They never get a connected sense or a narrative about the West. They don't know, you can't refer to anything. You can't refer to the Bible or to Shakespeare or to Michelangelo or to, you know, what democracy is. They have all different ideas about what democracy is. It's not grounded in any sort of historical sense of historical democracies in ancient Greece or republics in ancient Rome. So you're basically teaching students who are mature but have infant minds. They don't know anything. So how you can't do anything advanced if you're constantly filling people in on basic facts of history, and they have to assimilate what the Renaissance is in the 10 seconds that you have to explain it. And then you have to use that concept. It just doesn't work. And this is with the best students in the country. I mean, theoretically, the best students in the country.
Now, Professor Hankins, I think that the project is summed up in the title of the book, A Golden Thread, because in order for people to have a holistic view of Western history, you do have to understand, number one, that actually there is a thread that runs throughout Western history. And number two, that actually the West is good. Because if you believe the West is bad, then you have to throw out all the good parts and focus in only on the bad parts, or treat history as non-contingent, as sort of bizarrely fragmentary, sort of a mosaic of things that happen. And if you also think that the West is bad, then you have to basically discard the idea of history as a whole. And so reestablishing the idea that there is, in fact, a through line through history. And sure, that through line isn't always a direct line. It's more of a thread than it is a direct line between point A and point B. But following that thread is really, really important. When did we, do you think, start to lose that thread? When is it that we decided that the thread no longer existed, so that we end up with a brand of student who really doesn't understand any of this?
Well, we stopped teaching Western civilization 2 generations ago, basically late 80s, early 90s. And the educational establishment got together and said, well, we don't need to teach Western Civ anymore. We want to teach global history. We don't want to reinforce militarism. This is the Vietnam generation. So they think of Western civilization as a fiction of the 20th century created to increase military enthusiasm, which is completely wrong. It's totally ignorant. But what happens when you don't teach any history, bad actors step in. And activists step in, and they poison people's minds. So our students, many of them anyway, not all of them, but many of them believe that the West is simply bad. And many teachers think the West is so bad, you shouldn't teach it because you'll infect people's minds with, racism and white supremacy and colonialism and sexism and you name it. I mean, it's become the whipping boy of the left, the Western tradition. So you have to teach it, or other people will start teaching it for you. And students now get most of their information from social media, and that's the worst place to get. You need something between your ears if you want to stop all the garbage that's being poured in. And the other thing I would mention is that we are, unfortunately, in a clash of civilizations. So I assure you, I've been to China many times. The Chinese know about their civilization. The Muslims know about their civilization. We are unilaterally disarming because our students know nothing about Western civilization. And how are you supposed to love and defend something that you know nothing about?
Well, the book is really fabulous. A Golden Thread, A History of the Western Tradition. The first volume came out August 26th. The next volume is shortly to come out, I believe. It is really magnificent. Honestly, everybody should have a copy of it in the same way that everybody used to have a copy of the Durant books on civilization. And then people read, small segments of them. The truth is that what's great about this book, The Golden Thread, is that you can pick up the book and you can open it up. You can read a couple of pages. You can put it back down and you can get an overall sense of the glory that is the Western tradition. Professor Hankins, really appreciate the time. Congrats on the book. It is a masterwork. Everybody should go get a copy.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Alrighty, folks, the show continues for our members right now. We have some breaking news out of CBS News, kind of fascinating stuff. Remember, in order to watch, you have to be a member. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.